everybody. I am Melissa Forziat. I'm a keynote speaker and the host of this Halt and Catch Fire rewatch podcast. When I speak, my topic is something that I call Take the Doughnut, which for me is another way to say carpe diem. Go after what you want in life. Something that I wanted to do this year was rewatch the show Halt and Catch Fire, and this time talk about it with other people, which is all of you. And this time we're going to talk about season 4, episode 1. We're done with the first 3 seasons of this show. We're into the last season. Can you believe it? Thank you all for being with me on this journey. I'm so honored that you have gotten this far into the rewatch. And for everybody who's been submitting feedback, I think you're all probably noticing that there's more and more feedback to share as we go through. And I keep thinking about how I was like kind of worried there'd be no feedback at all when I first started this. And that was wrong. I didn't have to be worried about that because you're here. It's so great. And so today we're going to talk about season 4, episode 1. Before we do, the last interview that we did, I actually got a chance to speak with Nick Pupo, who was Carl from Mutiny. He's one of the Mutiny team members from seasons 2 and 3, and he shared some really fun things. One of the things I'm noticing is that I've had a chance, obviously, to speak with a number of people who were part of the Mutiny team. And in order to do that for my prep, I was watching sort of the same scenes over and over again, but from different angles each time. And I found it rewarding to do that. I was coming away with new details each time I did that. And it's the same is true with Nick's interview. So I hope that you really enjoy that one. And, today we're going to get into season 4, episode 1, which is called So It Goes. Now, So It Goes, there are a lot of things that have used that title, songs, lots of things. As a Billy Joel fan, there's And So It Goes. But I think what's worth looking at here is that the phrase "so it goes" is in reference to Slaughterhouse-Five, Vonnegut's book. The phrase "so it goes" appears after every mention of death and mortality in Slaughterhouse-Five, which is interesting to think about in the context of this episode, because there hasn't been an actual death. I mean, there was Ryan's, but we were past that. We were a couple episodes past that. So I try to take this interpretation, if that is the interpretation we're supposed to give it, as more of a metaphor. Look, I mean, I think the last episode, I guess there was sort of like the death of a relationship between Cam and Donna. Maybe there was there could be a lot of different deaths that we're looking at in that way. So it's something that I encourage all of us to think about as we go into this episode, because I haven't really sat with how that applies, but maybe that'll become apparent as we talk it through for the recap. And I also think it is worth to sort of reset things a little bit here, because I'm so interested in the fact that they did a time jump in 309, and then they're time jumping again in 401. And I think a lot of us were commenting about the fact that time jump in 309 was very unexpected. Felt right when you look back at it. They did it in a really inventive way to get us into that present day of 1990. But at the same time, you're thinking, okay, but we're only a couple episodes away from the end of this season. And then, they only give you basically a month of time in the show to absorb that new time period. And then they're going to time jump again in this episode. And for me, it feels beautifully done. I think that this could have gone horribly wrong. We've seen a lot of shows that don't do effective time jumps, or they do sloppy time jumps, or there are things that don't make sense about where they reset the characters, or they really try to force new situations. This feels like the characters we've been following, but just a little further along. It really does feel like they've earned the outcomes that they get at the end of their time jumps. I also love that they've found inventive ways, both times in the last couple episodes that they've done time jumps, they've done inventive ways of giving us information without hammering it over the head with exposition. And so it's really interesting to see how they've done this. I'm very excited to talk about the sequence that we'll start with to do that here. But I just wanted to reflect on that for a moment because I think there's something really interesting in the fact that they're so brave to burn through story here. They're not afraid to say we're only spending 2 episodes in 1990 and then we're going to move on. And, the willingness to be that aggressive with your timelines and say, no, we've told the story we need to tell from this point, and then we're going to move forward from there. It's brave, it's bold, it's a big choice, and I think it pays off here. So it goes is the title of this episode. It originally aired August 19th, 2017. And like we've been seeing, I'm noticing that the next one also aired on this date. So I'm guessing that when they did these season openers, they would do 2 episodes back to back in the airing. And I believe, I don't know that I mentioned it last time, but I'm pretty sure the last 2 episodes of the last season also aired on the same day. So I think, I guess if you were watching this real time, is that how this was happening? That's how it appears to be happening, where they were bunching up, doing sort of double features of the first 2 and the last 2 for some of these seasons. This one was directed by Juan Jose Campanella. And then it was written by Christopher Cantwell and Christopher C. Rogers. We've seen this pairing before. We've seen this start a season a few times. And oh gosh, it's so nice to have Juan Jose Campanella back for this one. And here's the description. In the 3 years since their initial meeting, Joe and Gordon have built up a web provider known as CalNect, trying to stay ahead of the competition. Cameron, however, has remained distant, continuing to pursue her career at Atari. Now, that is the short description that I got from a wiki. But here's mine. Here's my short description. Donna, Joe, and Cameron are doing various iterations of spinning out. Gordon is sort of in the middle of it all going, and Diane and Boz are sailing. That's it. Recap over. I find Gordon's placement in this whole thing really funny because he's like, look, he has some perspective, I guess, from having dealt with like this health issue for so many years, but he's like trying to find balance in his life. And I think he's doing a sort of decent job of it in spite of everybody around him who is just like, they're just like sparking in all these different ways. It's not all the same, but they're all just melting down in their various ways. And he's just like, okay, let's live another day. It's just funny to think about him in this context. But let's get into the scene by scene breakdown. Let's talk about it. I just love the way this opens. Look, this may remind you of the oneer that we started season 2 with. It has that feel to it. It has the effect of being a oneer when we watch it, but it's not actually a oneer. It can't actually be a oneer. And I of course had a chance to speak with Robert Komatsu, the editor, way back when, and he talked a little bit about some of the edits that they did in this sequence to make it feel smooth. And I'm going to speak to that a bit as I go through. But this, I guess, to set it up, is actually time jumping us, but it's showing us moments from within that and sort of putting them together, blending them together in a way that feels seamless to us. So, it's different certainly than the actual long oneer that we saw at the start of 201, where we were tracking Donna through the Mutiny House and we were meeting, it was like sort of a morning in the life of the Mutiny House, and we were meeting a lot of those characters for the first time, and Donna was sort of taking us through to see what was happening in that space. This is much more focused on what's happening with Gordon and with Joe, but it is taking us through those spaces as well. So one of the things I really noticed about this is that the camera keeps moving like it did in 201. The camera is constantly moving, and it's diving down. It's making all these really interesting. It's not just panning. It's really, this camera is in motion, of all sorts. We've seen that done on this show before. We've seen, I keep thinking about that scene where we were in the Clark house in season 3, and the camera sort of went through the house and then like came down and went into a closet so we could see what was happening with Gordon's cam radio. So me doing these hand motions is sort of simulating what it feels like to this camera. Just feels like it has no restrictions on where it goes and how it gets there. It's so amazing. So we're going to start actually at the ceiling at the old Mutiny offices. We're looking at the Mnet sign. The room is very dark. We play a lot with darkness and light throughout this episode. We're going to get some Paul Hesslinger score in the background, just beautiful composition that really opens us up. And it feels sort of like futuristic, kind of like, a lot of it is really disorienting actually. And I think the music plays in well with that. The camera is going to show us more of the room. We're going to see lights on, the room is very dark, but we're going to see that table that was in 310, where our characters sat around it and argued about the future of the World Wide Web and what it actually was. And that table is still there. And we're going to see the table still pretty dark, but there are lights that are hitting the chairs around it. And then they're going to see the camera is going to focus in on one of the tables in the room, on a bunch of papers that are on it. It's going to go the long way. We're going to take a look at other things that are on that table. We're going to get, a TCP/IP protocols and advanced networking manual. We're going to keep going up the table. We're going to see a pencil. We're going to see a phone. Then the camera is going to go over the edge of the table, like it's fallen off a cliff, basically. It's going to look down the hole that Joe fell through, because that hole is still in the floor. And then it's going to go through the hole in the floor. It's going to dive through the hole in the floor into the basement, where once we get there, we're now going to see Gordon. He is sitting in the basement. He is wearing, and this is something that I think is interesting. He's wearing a red flannel shirt that he will continue to wear through this entire sequence, no matter how much time we jump, no matter how many outfit changes Joe has. Gordon is staying consistent with this red flannel shirt. I think there's a couple reasons they have to do that, because a lot of times technically they're blending on Gordon, so they have to have a consistent look there. But I guess there's also something to be said for there's consistency in Gordon while everything is changing around him. Potentially a lot of interpretations there. We're going to see Gordon sitting in the basement. The phone is next to him and it rings. He answers. He's going to say, "Happy New Year's. How's Tokyo?" So look, I'm going to need your help with timing on this. I'm doing my best to interpret how much time we actually jump. It gets a little unglued for me at the end, but I'm going to need some fact checking support with this. So we ended 310 in December 1990, correct? So we were right before the holidays. We were right before Christmas, because we know that Cam and Tom had Christmas plans in Texas. So Happy New Year, how's Tokyo? We're assuming that we're looking at like first day of 1991, and that Cam is back in Tokyo. We hear Cameron's voice. She says, "Good, cold." Gordon says, "Good, good. Well, we're going to see Joe come down the stairs. He's got a cast on his right arm. So again, we're very soon after where we left off." Joe says, "Is that her?" Gordon nods. Gordon says to Cam, "Okay, we got some first steps for the browser that we want to walk you through so we can, hit the ground running when you get back to town." Cam's voice says, "Gordon, I'm going to be working on this project remotely." Gordon just sort of throws his head back and he closes his eyes. He's like, "Oh." She says, "I need to talk to Joe, just me." He says, "Yeah, okay." And he's going to give Joe the phone. He says, "Wants to talk to you." Gordon and Joe exchange a look. This is not good news for Joe. Joe says, hello, how are you doing? Gordon's going to run up the stairs. It's fairly agile in this moment, isn't he? The camera, Gordon runs up the stairs. The camera takes the shortest possible route. It cuts through the ceiling and the floor. It just goes straight up. And then we're going to see it go into the main room above. Gordon is going to come into the main room, and basically we've got those lights spotlighting where he's going to land. He's going to pick up the upstairs phone very gently so as not to be heard. This is not a time jump. This is Gordon just going upstairs. I like the choice to do this vertical lift through the floor because it's a little different than how we go up and downstairs later, which mostly are time jumps. So this is an interesting way to say, no, we're just going upstairs without doing the time jump. Visually, it's a little different. All right, so Gordon has picked up the phone so we can hear what Joe and Cam are saying. Joe says, I don't understand. Everything that we hear between Joe and Cam here, we're watching Gordon's face. Cam says to Joe, I told Tom what happened, and he and we both agreed that it would be best if I worked on the browser remotely from here. Gordon is going to put the phone down. He just sort of lets his hand drop. He's just staring. He swallows. We are going to linger on this for a second. Actually, pause for a moment. Look, I've been debating exactly how much Donna and Gordon understood about what was happening in the room between Joe, Tom, and Cam in the last episode. I think it seems like some of you are thinking like they for sure knew. Some of you, I think, we're not sure. I'm still on the fence about it. Like, obviously there was tension between Tom and Joe and Cam in the room. Obviously, Tom and Joe were feeling very like they were basically duking it out over Cam. But that doesn't necessarily mean that something actually happened between Cam and Joe. It could just mean that there's jealousy or there's conflict, or, Tom maybe knows that Joe wants her. Like, I think there could be multiple interpretations without knowing for sure that Cam and Joe slept together in the previous episode. So I don't know exactly how much Gordon and Donna knew, but I think if Gordon didn't know for sure, this is another very big clue. Look, she doesn't outright say, hey, remember when we slept together at Comdex? Because that would be ridiculous, right? Like, this show is better than that. But like, you get something like this, and if Gordon has not put those particular pieces together, this should be enough to do it. So my understanding is that he gets it. He gets what's happening here if he didn't before. But can you imagine if this was a show that was like, remember a month ago when we slept together at Comedy? Yes, yeah. So many shows do that. Anyway, and you're really trusting your audience to remember that I guess something that I like about that is that here we are, it's a new season. It's just about a year later in real time for the original broadcast of this. So you're kind of assuming that your audience has been with you all this time and remembers what they're talking about here. So I just, I love that this show seems to be honoring its longtime fans. Anyway, so, okay, we're going to get that. Gordon is sitting there absorbing this information. He's kind of like looking up like, oh, this is the project I've gotten myself into. We're going to see a light from a window behind him it starts to like grow and expand. It's getting brighter. And then we are going to blend through his shirt down to the phone where we've now gone forward in time. Gordon is dialing a number. I guess a technical note on this, he's not picking up the receiver. He's not trying to make a call. He's not picking up the phone to talk to somebody. He's just like keeping himself busy and dialing a number repeatedly. Notice, for those who haven't noticed this before, we've heard this song before in the show. So this tune that he's tapping out is something familiar to us. Go back and check it out if you don't remember. Okay, so he's tapping out this number. Joe is also in the room. They're still in that upstairs main room. Joe is pacing back and forth. He's wearing a long black coat and a hat. So it must be cold, must be winter. Gordon's still in his flannel shirt. Joe says very impatiently, "What time is it there?" There are workers in the room repairing the floor. Gordon, specifically the hole in the floor, not the entire floor. Gordon says they're 17 hours ahead, so whatever time it is here. Look, she doesn't need to be on the phone for us to upload it to Gopher. Joe's very frustrated. He says she wrote it. She needs to be available. He's shouting to the workers. He's just losing it. He says, "Guys, I need, stop hammering." He yells at them. The hammering stops. Gordon's rubbing his eyes. He's like, "Please stop the hammering." Gordon says, "It's midnight there." Joe is frustrated. He says, "This is the time she specified." It's tricky with time zones, right? It's like, why is she asking them to call her at midnight? But then, they have to make choices about what inconvenient time of day they're going to speak. There's a lot of time between them. All right, so Gordon sort of waves his hand at Joe. He starts walking away. Gordon says, "Well, maybe Godzilla's fighting Mothra again." So this is the time she specified, and what's keeping her? Maybe Godzilla's fighting Mothra again. Now, this is a cute little thing to say, but also it kind of gives us a sense of what time period we're in, because we have jumped forward in time, but we don't know how far forward we've jumped to in time. I'm assuming that it's a winter because of what Joe is wearing. So Mothra, there's a little bit of history of Mothra. Okay, if we go way back, Mothra first came onto the scene as a self-titled project in 1961, and then there was a 1964 version of Godzilla and Mothra, Godzilla versus Mothra. But I think why this is coming into play here is that there's also a Godzilla versus Mothra that was released in December 1992. This was a Japanese kaiju film directed by Takao Okawara. So that came out in December 1992. Joe's wearing the long coat, so we're in probably the winter of, it could be late December 92, could be like early January or February 1993. So we're somewhere in that time range right there. So basically that would put us, we're a couple years advanced from where we were. Is that right? Couple years advanced. We were at the very beginning of 91, potentially we're at the very beginning of 93. So we might have jumped 2 years at this point. Again, fact check me, math in my head right now, not working out so great. The hammering starts again as Gordon walks away. Joe is going to shout back at him, "We're going to try her again in 20 minutes. We hear the sawing start. The worker, then we see Gordon's going to walk through a doorway, but he's going to sort of look back again. We're going to see the workers. They're actually just patching the floor. Which I guess you have to do, right? But they're not working on the entire floor right now. They're literally just laying floorboards on top of the hole. Hopefully they will, hopefully they'll do something to make the floor level. I actually have no idea how you would normally do this. I suppose it all starts with covering up the hole. Anyway, they're almost in the dark, those workers. Gordon is going to shout back to them because they started sawing again. He's like, guys, please. All right, it's too early in the morning for this. Gordon's going to go down the stairs. This is the most interesting edit to me. I don't know where the edit is. Robert Komatsu, we need you. Do we blend somehow? did they try to line up Gordon walking down the stairs perfectly between these scenes? Like, it looks tricky to me. Where they must have blended somewhere on Gordon going down the stairs. I just don't know where. It's amazing how, like, if that's how they did this, how do you sync that up? I'm just bananas. Anyway, so we've gone down the stairs again. We're in the basement with Gordon, and we're gonna see Joe there with long hair. So more time has elapsed. He's in a long coat and scarf. So it's a winter again, or it's just cold in the basement. So he's got a desk set up down there. Joe is on the phone. He says, that's because nobody is downloading it at all. No, you're right. Forgive me. 69 downloads last quarter. Is that better? A year and we're barely a ripple in the pond. So now does that make it like December 93 or like very early in 94? Gordon is going to join Joe at that desk area. He's going to sort of lean on the computer. There are post-its all over the desk. So Joe says, never available. He can't even look at Gordon. He's a little bit sort of like hunched over. He's like sort of gone. It kind of a little bit reminds me, because Cam gets very hunched over when she's coding. We've seen that for years now. But Joe, he's like, it's like a protective hunch. It's like he's been staring at these post-its just sitting at this desk for so long that it's actually changing his physical posture. He's very frustrated. He says, or if we do somehow manage to get her on the phone, she's busy or defensive, or Gordon says stuck at 69 downloads. Joe's going to shake his head and sigh. Gordon says, look, Joe, we're building the core ISP business upstairs by the day, which means we don't need overnight success with the web browser, but why do you keep putting yourself through this with her? So look, it's been years. It's been years. And a lot of things you could say about that. I mean, no wonder this is driving Joe absolutely crazy. It's been years. Where we left off at the end of season 3, Joe had every reason to believe that, like, Joe doesn't know that she had a conversation with Tom in the car saying, I'm going to go back to Japan with you. She goes into this meeting with Gordon and Joe. They're standing around that computer. A new project is beginning. Maybe that felt like hope to Joe. But here we are. It's been years. We could very well be at the beginning of 94. And I mean, he's just been thwarted at every turn by Cameron. So there's that. Gordon has been seeing the writing on the wall with this, and he upstairs is creating a viable business model to make sure that they're still up and running. And I get the feeling that he's been, we haven't seen it, but he's probably been trying to include Joe in conversations about that for some amount of time. But here's Joe in the basement, just sort of holed up in the basement and still very fixated on this project he's supposed to be doing with Cam. That's not happening. So Gordon's now at a point where he's saying things like, why do you keep putting yourself through this with her? Like, buddy, please do something for yourself. Please. Like, he just, this must be hard to watch if you're Gordon. Joe is going to get a little, he's going to defend something here. He says, this work is important. Gordon says, that's not what I asked. Because what Gordon asked was, why do you keep putting yourself through this with her? And Joe's just like, this work is important. Gordon says, that's not what I asked. Joe looks up at Gordon with his mouth just kind of hanging open. He doesn't answer that question. He's like, Gordon's asking the correct question, but Joe cannot process that question. So instead, he says, with determination, I'll make sure those bugs get fixed. Okay. What do you do? So Joe is going to go back to work. He's going to just hunker down again. Gordon is going to walk away. He's rubbing his head, his temples. He's still in his flannel shirt. He's going to walk back upstairs. Camera's going to blend onto his shirt, the back of his shirt. And then we're going to get a more brightly lit scene as he gets to the top of the stairs. He goes into that main office area, but this time it's now vibrant, it's carpeted, it's full of workers and desks. There's a phone ringing. Interestingly enough, look, I should not be a person who's giving you a lot of information about decor, but here's what I noticed going into this room. I think it has sort of a Japanese style look to it. The dividers between the desks are these sort of wooden slat dividers. There are these there's trees all over the room. It feels Japanese to me. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that. Which might be a bit of an ode to Cameron living in Japan, or maybe that was the one decision Joe wanted to make. My guess is that, Gordon's been trying to involve Joe in what's been happening upstairs all this time. And the one time Joe finally does contribute is when they decide what the room is going to look like. And I'm guessing Joe just wants Cam to feel comfortable there. So he picks out everything that he thinks would remind Cam of Japan in this space. That's my guess on how this happens. That's me making a lot of assumptions, including that this is Japanese decor. But anyway, so Gordon is going to see one of the people who works there. He's going to go to him. He's going to say, Shep, have you talked to Cameron? Okay, so that's Shep. Shep is walking with somebody. He says, Gordon, this is Mike Hausman from America Online. America Online is going to have certainly, there's going to be a number of references to AOL here as we go through. Mike shakes Gordon's hand. He says, great to meet you, Gordon. Gordon's still wearing that flannel shirt because it's still consistency with Gordon here. Gordon says, yeah, likewise. Mike says, yeah, I want to talk about acquiring your user base. Quite a land grab that must be happening here with AOL at this point. The camera is still moving around. We're going to see it kind of all over the office. I was trying to look for signage at this point. We do actually see signage. There's a conference room that now appears to be basically where like Boz's old office was, with the conference room there. And that is where we're going to see the signage for CalNect, but it's inside the room, so it's not easy to make out. Gordon's going to pat Mike's back. He says, is AOL really that afraid of the open internet? And they're both going to laugh. We're competitors. We can have a joke together like this. Mike says, well, it's either that or we crush you when we expand west. Where he says, well, let me tell you something, Mike. And he doesn't get to because Joe's going to walk across the room. He basically never stops walking. He walks from the back of the room all the way past them, keeps walking into the next space. He's all in black now. He's not wearing a long coat, but he's got black pants. He's got a black button down shirt with like 3/4 sleeves. So he's got this like sleek look going here. But his hair is long. Joe's going to say, I need to show you something right now. He's talking specifically to Gordon. He's just cutting through the whole, like, he's not acknowledging any humans around him. He just has to show Gordon something. Gordon says, Mike, this is Joe McMillan. He's our web services division. Because that is the only way Joe is going to be involved with this project, I guess. Mike says, impressive, you're into the web. Joe says very offhandedly, it's where everything's headed. And Joe looks at Gordon and he keeps walking. He says, Gordon is going to follow Joe into that upstairs office. It's still very brightly lit, this whole scene. Joe says, he asks Mike and Shep to excuse them. Basically, he barely acknowledges anybody else, including this guy from AOL. Joe's going to pull out a chair so Gordon can sit down at the computer. I think this is Gordon's office. He's going to show Gordon something on the screen. Joe says it's called Mosaic. He says, all right, so there's another browser in the game. We still got Nexus, Viola, Midas. Joe says, don't forget Millennium, thanks to Donna. So Donna has a competing product with We're going to get the name of theirs in a second, I think, Lodestar. Gordon says, who's got just as much a right to this idea as we do. So Donna has a competing thing in their space. And Gordon's like, look, she was in the room with us. This is she came to us with this. Like, there's no saying she can't do the same thing we're trying to do. Joe says, but those aren't this. So all those other competitors, they're not whatever Mosaic's doing. Joe starts pointing around to the Mosaic features. We can see the screen now. We can see just a little bit of Mosaic. They're not scrolling down. We just see what's on the screen here above the fold. So he says, inline images, web forum support, available on every platform. He's so angry about this. And he's like, if Cameron hadn't been radio silent for 5 months. Okay, so are we in like mid 94 now? You look, math, I'm talking through this because this isn't even the numbers that I had written down. I'm revising these on the fly. So are we in about mid 94? If it's 5 months since the last time, and I was thinking maybe we were at like December 93 or January, February 94, are we like summer 94? Anyway, he's getting fired up. Gordon, he's gonna nod. Yep, Mosaic sucks. All right. So like he gets up to walk away. Joe's continuing. If she had fixed the bugs, Gordon's leaving the room. We're gonna see Joe and the office behind him becoming dark. It's all sort of fading into the distance. Gordon's rubbing his temples. If she had fixed the bugs, helped us iterate, I don't mind losing. But if we're not even going to get a chance to compete, Joe's voice becomes echoey in the darkness. The whole scene is now dark except for Gordon. And there's just a little bit of light on Gordon. And the window behind him, it looks dark outside. And there's even sort of a flash of lightning. And then we're going to hear just Gordon's voice very low in the dark. The scene is very dark. And we hear Gordon's voice just say, where the hell is Cameron? And then we blend in the dark. And then we see Gordon now start to walk into the light, just a body part at a time. We get an ear, we get, his hands, his face as he's still rubbing his temples. So we're getting him from the side. Now we're going to see Gordon looking into the distance, into the dark. And now we're outside. We are like in the woods outside. We're going to go around behind Gordon. The camera goes from like looking at the ear to around behind him. Now we're going to look out front of him. He's looking into the woods, and there's a table that's been set up in the woods with basically the giant on it. So it's calling us back to that pilot episode of this show where Joe and Gordon are working together in Gordon's garage, and they're reverse engineering the IBM BIOS. And we see the colored lights on the table. We see a magnifier and a light. We see a briefcase, which we would assume the actual finished giant is in. And we're going to see somebody sitting in a chair next to all of this with a manual. Not, if you open it this way, he's holding it this way. And this person's face is covered up behind it. But then, so Gordon is sort of squinting at this, like, how are we outside now? We're going to see now a close-up of Joe's face. He's got shorter hair, and he's flipping through this book held sideways. He's the one sitting in the chair. What's this moment, you might be asking? Joe says, now we do our own chip. So it's like back to the past here. Gordon blinks as he's looking at this. We're going to see a close-up of his blinking eyes, a profile shot. And then we're going to hear Joe's voice in the present day saying, over here. Now Gordon's going to turn. He's going to turn his face to see Joe, who they're still in the woods. This time Joe is amidst the trees. It's very foggy. He's got long hair. He's wearing a leather jacket that we're going to get to know and love with Joe for so much of this season. The camera setup is now going to go further back so we can see more of this scene. And there's actually a glowing camping tent that's set up, and Joe is standing next to it. Joe says, "Are you all right?" So Gordon looks a little disoriented here. He's like, "Yeah." Now we're going to see a wide shot of Gordon amongst the trees. Small Gordon, big trees, a lot of them. And he's still wearing his red flannel shirt, little lumberjack style, if you will. It's night. Gordon's like, "I'm fine." And now he's going to walk through the frame holding firewood. So he exits the frame, just walking, holding firewood. And that, I would say, you could decide when you think the sequence ends of the oneer that isn't a oneer, but I'm going to end it there. Couple things that are, gosh, it is amazing. Look, here are some of the many reasons why it's amazing. Okay, so first of all, camera work is absolutely incredible. The way it's trying to distinguish when we're moving through time and when we're not, the way we're playing with light, and we're going to see light and shadow played with later in the episode as well. The way we're doing the editing, like between these moments, because it looks to us like a oneer, but when you sit with it, it's like, it can't be. There's no way this could be a oneer. So, you know, obviously there have to be edits here, and sometimes I have no clue how they did it. So there's all of that. They're moving us through time. This is a really disorienting sequence to start off the episode, to start off the season. And I think that's great because they're moving us through time. They're showing us little pieces of what's happening. We're getting some really important information as we go through. We're getting sort of the status of a few of these core relationships as we go through. But it also reminds us that Gordon is sort of the consistent thing that all of this is rotating around. But we also have these little clues of remembering, hey, Gordon's not entirely well. He's had an illness for a good long time now, and it's something he's continuing to grapple with. So in the way that he's rubbing his temples, in the way that they're playing with these flashes of light, the lightning outside, in the way that we slip back to the past for a minute, reminding us of season 1. And he's like, what am I even looking at here? You know, we've seen him do that before. If you remember that one time he gave a speech to his new team in his garage, and it was like he was giving a speech when he was working at Cardiff Electric. You know, we're getting all these signals. So it's keeping us so off balance, but also giving us a ton of information. And it's a way to do all this without having to sit down and do a bunch of exposition. They could just, I don't know. So let's say we're in mid 1994 now. I don't know. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. It's instead of just opening on Joe and Gordon in 1994, and Gordon's like, we haven't heard from Cameron in 3-4 years now. Like, you know, and Joe's like, and I'm so angry about it. You know, like, what, you could do that. A lot of shows probably would do something like that. But instead, they're just giving us these moments, showing us the repairs of the office and how slow they were to get to them. You know, like it's like they're trying not to cover up those last moments that they had with this team in the building with them, with Cam in the building with them. And then they start to move forward. But Gordon's the one moving forward, not Joe. Joe's having, you know, like really fixed in place here. I think the shifting of Joe's appearance versus the way that Gordon looks exactly the same through all of this time jumping. You know, Joe's the one with the hair that's getting longer. Joe's the one whose attire is changing, but always black. You know, we're getting Joe's the one whose posture is changing. You know, we're getting so much information here. Oh, it's so brilliant. And again, Not only are they not spoon feeding us, but here I am trying to figure out when we are in time. And I still can't sort of lock it down for you. So they're certainly not spoon feeding us. And they're not spoon feeding new people to the show either. It's like, if this is the first time you're tuning into Halt and Catch Fire, you'd be like, what, what's happening? It's beautiful, but what's happening? So I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. We're going to resume here camping with Joe and Gordon. They're sitting together around a fire. Joe's got his long hair. He's now got these, like, are they clear or are they white rimmed glasses? Really specific look he's got going right now. Joe is very quietly speculating. He says, I bet it was her new game. I'm sure she just got wrapped up in it, forgot all about us. Gordon says, what if we uncapped usage? Unlimited access for every customer. No more hourly rates, just a flat monthly fee. Joe says, that's a good idea. Smart. He, a couple of times in this sequence, does this finger gesture point, like he points upward. It's like this new gesture he's picked up that we've never seen before. He says, it's a good idea. Smart. Look, I don't mean to harp on it, but what galls me is she still owes us a final version. We had a first mover advantage, and now Mosaic is the front door to the web. Gordon takes a taste of something while he's cooking. He's like, I'm just going to make sure we get fed in this whole situation. Gordon's like, that spoonful of something tastes much better than Joe never stopping talking about Cam in years. Gordon says, yeah, I heard they had 1 million downloads in the first 6 months. Joe is dismissive. He says those numbers must be inflated. Meanwhile, Lodestar, their platform, stands at a whopping 431. Gordon says, well, maybe that's okay. Joe does his finger gesture again. He says, but we can build a Mosaic killer. She couldn't do it. We can find someone who can. Gordon's like, Joe, how many times do you have to be right? Joe's just going to look at him, not reacting. Gordon says, maybe we should just be grateful or something. I mean, this is a technology that we only could have dreamed of back in that garage. Joe's just going to sigh. He's going to look away. Gordon's like, you should have brought Ozzy. I wouldn't have minded. Joe looks down. He's like, yeah. Gordon says, but Joe laughs a little bit. He says, nothing. We broke up 3 weeks ago. Joe has not moved on at all. Gordon looks disappointed. He's like, oh man. Gordon was hoping that Ozzy would be the antidote to all things Cam, but he is not. Joe is going to push his glasses up. He's going to say, hey, Gordon, and he's so genuine. He says, happy 40th birthday. Or he says, happy 40th. They both smile. They're going to clink drinks together and they cheers. So now we seem to be solidly planted in whatever this time period is. And what I'm gathering from this is that not only has Joe not let things go with Cameron, he complains about Cameron to Gordon every 20 seconds for however many years it has been. Maybe it's mid 94. I don't know, but it's probably not far off of that. And he is like, Cameron. Oh yeah, you're upstairs off, Cameron. It's like, and meanwhile, Gordon is literally trying to keep them nourished. He is cooking them dinner while camping, or he's fixing dinner while camping. He is fixing up the upstairs office. He has populated that upstairs office with humans. He has made a viable business out of the upstairs. Like, Gordon is keeping them running so that Joe can almost never spend any time thinking about what's happening upstairs and instead constantly be fixated on Cam. It is so upsetting to see. This has literally, it seems like it's driven him actually crazy. I don't use that word lightly. Like, I think that he is, I keep feeling like he's sort of like he feels like an addict to me in this episode, and I'm sure you could argue before that. I think somebody has used that term before that in the feedback section. He is so obsessed, and he's so in pain, and he's so bitter about it. He just has never been able to accept, like, she's just not into you, man. She's ghosted him all the way. What, for whatever reason, maybe she is, or maybe she isn't into him, but she is not responding. And he, instead of, like, Gordon keeps being like, hey, maybe accept it, try accepting it. He's like, no, quite literally with this finger. He just can't. He cannot. And he just needs to keep harping on this. Gordon's saying, how many times do you need to be right? Yes, she's doing you dirty. We can all see it. Like, it's, yes. Move on, man. Move on with Ozzy. No, he broke up. Okay. It's so hard to watch what's happened to Joe. And so I just, it pains me to see the way that Joe has evolved over these years, but it all makes sense. All right, let's go to a very different looking visual. So we're going to see the screen of a game somebody is playing. It's a game testing environment, basically, is what's happening here. There's beautiful graphics in this game. We get a tall figure, very long arms, blonde/white hair. This figure is walking toward a town wearing like a blue and purple and white space-like outfit. We're going to hear buttons clicking. We're going to see a few kids in this room playing this game. So we've got Vince, who's playing the game. He's shaking his head. He's, try the corridor again. Okay. There's Trey next to him who says, well, we were just there and all we found was this rusty walking stick thing. We've got Dennis in the room. He says, well, can you equip it? We're going to hear like a magic wand kind of sound, like a, I don't know, the sound you might hear when a magic wand puts magic on everything. Anyway, Trey is just like mystified by all this. He's like, the stick particulates in your hand. It's definitely something Cam would have written. Dennis is just shaking his head and walking away. Trey's like, yeah, cool. It's not really cool. He's like, dude, what? Vince is really frustrated. The guy who's actually playing the game says, this feels like homework. Dennis says, seriously, I'm getting cold just watching this. We're going to see that there's a one-way mirror in this room. And Dennis actually walks up to it. He says, oh, good, another puzzle. Good thing we haven't seen anybody in like 10 minutes. And Dennis looks into the mirror, knowing full well there are people behind. He says, you can't even kill anything. We're going to now see who's behind. Well, we're sort of going to see who's behind the mirror. We see them from the back at first. Bunch of people who are standing watching these kids play this game. But then we're going to see the front of a few of them. And we're going to see one of those people is Cam. She's got long hair. Joe has long hair. Cam's got long hair. Longest we've ever seen her hair. I guess technically her hair was long at the end of season 3, but she had it like in a braid, and now it's just loose and down. So we get the voices of one of those boys. They're like, ah, shoot. They're getting so frustrated. Ah, Cam is just watching all of this, not reacting to it. One of the guys in the room is watching her, a guy that she's going to talk to later and sort of debrief about all this. We're going to now see a close-up of the screen with some sort of like a horseshoe-shaped figure on the screen that's rotating. Trey's like, okay, here we go. Something's happening. And then the character is put back into like a grassy field with a town in front of them, the town that they were just walking through. Vince is like, wait, what the hell? We're back at the beginning? This is bullshit. They're all frustrated. Cam is just, she's seen enough. She walks into the room. One of the guys is like, who are you? She, similar to Joe, is wearing what looks like black pants and a black collar, like a collared button-down shirt. She says, hi. What's your favorite video game right now? Vince gets very excited. He's like, Mortal Kombat. Trey's like, yeah, Mortal Kombat. She looks a little annoyed at this. Dennis says, I prefer Street Fighter 2 for the superior controls and graphics. Dennis. Cam is going to smile. But it's not really a smile. She is like, okay, thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming in. Here's your Pioneered Chicken gift certificates. We appreciate your feedback, but she doesn't really appreciate their feedback. Boys leave the room. She's going to walk up to the mirror looking very annoyed. She's like, this is not our target demographic. We need to be going after higher GPAs, readers with immersive fantasy and sci-fi interests. This isn't a game you play, it's a game you live. She wants people like Chet from season 2. Okay, that's who she wants. Okay, now we're going to go back to Gordon and Joe. So we're going to see Gordon walking down the stairs into the basement. Oh, by the way, with the Cam stuff, this is the game that Joe had been referring to. And he's like, she's probably been working on her game. She forgot about us. She is, in fact, currently working on her game. Anyway, so let's go back to Gordon and Joe. Gordon walks down the stairs into the basement, and Joe is there working, and there are so many Post-its. Somebody's job on set for this scene was to put up all these Post-its. Okay. They're written on. They're all different colors. They are in some sort of a sequence in the colors, like they're blocked in certain ways. They're everywhere. They're on the table that he's working on. They're all around the computer. They're on every surface he can reach in the room. They're everywhere. It's so, it's like OCD at this point. I don't know. Okay. Gordon's like, how many websites now? Joe is still in his leather jacket. So remember, Gordon was in that flannel shirt for that whole early sequence. Joe is basically not going to leave this leather jacket now. He says 561, and I found a new one for you. Gordon's like, look, if this is the one that translates your name into Hawaiian, I already did it. Joe's like, and? Gordon puts on a Hawaiian accent, maybe. He's like, Kolokona. Joe says, hey, look at this one. Gordon comes over and looks at the computer with him. He's like, it's a coffee pot. Joe's very proud. He's like, that is a coffee pot at the University of Cambridge, 5,000 miles away. He's pointing to it. He says, that's not a picture. It's a live video feed. See, it gets worse and worse for Joe here, because if you can get a live feed of a coffee pot, could he somehow find a way to get Cam to get a live feed from Japan? He's thinking this stuff. Anyway, so it's like, that's not a picture. It's a live video feed. He's admiring it. He's fascinated by this coffee pot. Gordon's looking at it. He's like, well, it looks really alive. Joe says, it's fascinating. He doesn't get out much. Gordon says, listen, Joe, I actually came down here to chat with you about something. Joe's like, shoot. And he's typing. He says, well, I was wondering if maybe you'd consider moving upstairs. I wonder how many times he's floated this. If this is the first time, he's like, I just want you to consider possibly thinking about maybe just wrapping your head around the idea of possibly coming upstairs. Come upstairs, Joe. Joe doesn't really understand. He's like, why? Where it says, well, the web services division hasn't originally grown the way we thought it would. And, we could really use the server space. And now that the browser's dead, Joe's like, dead? We might have stalled a little bit, but that's because we're just getting started. Gordon nods. I hear you. Yeah, I hear you. Joe says, I'm not moving upstairs. If anything, you're moving down here. Oh, snap. Okay. He's living in his own world for sure right now. Now, granted, saying this from 2024, Joe probably was right, but it does not look like it's heading in this direction at this point in time. So Gordon says, listen, Joe, you've been down here for almost 3 years, and it's still just, an ergonomic chair and 500 Post-its. All right, Joe's been down there for almost 3 years. So look, he wasn't working in the basement the whole time, but if, season three ended, if season three ended December 1990, Gordon picks up the phone at the beginning of this episode and says, Happy New Year, 1991. He's been in this basement for 3 years. We're in 94, right? Okay. So listen, Joe, you've been down here for almost 3 years. Plus, like, he's saying almost 3 years, but 3 years from when? Because he wasn't actually working out of the basement until a little bit into our Warner sequence. So when does that 3 year countdown start? Ugh. I'd say we're comfortably in 94, right? I don't know, guys, help. Okay. So, all right. He says, you've been down here for almost 3 years. It's still just you, an ergonomic chair, and 500 Post-its. Joe does not like hearing this truth. Gordon says, listen, I'll say it again. You did it. You and Ryan called it. You said the internet would be the next great public utility. Well, guess what? We're here. We did it. We are Thomas Edison. We built the power company. So why don't you come upstairs and run the power company with me? This is like a real, Joe's listening but not liking any of this. When you invoke Ryan's name in anything, it means business. I think you're going to get him to go when you do that. And so this is Gordon really trying. Joe says, Gordon, nobody remembers the power company. Gordon slams down an AOL free trial CD on his desk. Remember those? I do. They tended to offer, because again, and Gordon mentioned this earlier, it was like an hourly thing to use these services. There was an hourly rate. You were billed for hourly usage. So the AOL free trials would be like 50 free hours, 100 free hours, like you get these discs that give you a limited number of hours. And then that's how you would connect to them. They wanted to hook you in so that you got so excited about it that you would then want to come back and actually sign up for their service. So Gordon's got one of these CDs. He slams it down on the desk. He says, it came free in the mail with my popular mechanics this month. AOL is carpet bombing. They're going after our entire territory. They're trying to take down CompuServe and Prodigy, but we could get caught in the crossfire. All I'm saying is, if we're about to go to war, it'd be nice to have you in the fight. Gordon's going to go upstairs. Joe's just looking down at this AOL CD. It had, some free hours on it. So we're, I can't help but think, when people are throwing discs down, I keep thinking about that, the Sonoris disc, the disc that Joe threw down on Cameron's signing from 2 episodes ago. It's just a nice little touch. We just sometimes get people throwing discs down at each other, but the disc has evolved. It's CD now. In a case, no less. Okay, so we are now going to see Donna, because we haven't seen her yet. And what a fun sequence to show us where Donna's at right now. We're going to see a woman come out of an elevator. We start with just basically her waist down. We see her skirt, her legs, her high heels clacking as she's walking through the hallway. Then we're cutting between Donna getting into work and Tanya, her assistant, prepping for her day. So Donna's walking off of the elevator. We haven't actually seen her yet. Then we're going to see the close-up of an orange being cut. Beautiful cutting board. Vibrant colors, all of these different bright colored fruits and vegetables on it. Somebody is grabbing one of the prepped fruits. Then we're going to see a conference room full of guys who we're going to find out later they're from the Millennium team. They're standing over a computer freaking out. One of them, whose name we get, is Abe. He says, Jesus, it has video now. They're all sweating. These guys are standing around the computer just like, ooh. Another one says mother, but then we're going to cut from there, an abrupt cut to avoid the curse. We're going to get Tanya putting fruit into a juicer. We don't know who Tanya is yet, but we're getting implications here. So then we're seeing the back of Donna as she walks through the office. She's still walking through. She looks very polished. She is put together. She is the sharpest she's ever looked. I will say that I'm generally not good at noticing people's outfits, as I've mentioned before. I've been really trying, but even on previous watches, I've often noticed Donna's attire in season 4. Holy cow. She's got some outfits. All right. So we're going to see she's walking through. She's looking very polished. We're going to get a close up of a watch on her hand. And then we're going to see Tanya making juice. We're going to get a close up of Tanya adding ice to a couple of drinks. She's going to bring a tray into an office in front of a beautiful window. She's going to put some flowers on the desk. She's probably going to put the drinks down. And then we're going to get a close-up on Donna's face as she is walking into the office. So now we know we've seen the people who were involved in this scene. We're going to hear the voice of one of the guys in the conference room, and then we'll move into the conference room. So we'll see one of them saying, "No, Abe, you needed to fully implement the updates this morning." Abe says, "You try reformatting HTML with a screaming 6-month-old in your arm." And the other guy's like, "Oh yeah, okay, good." He said, "Oh, that's just great timing, isn't it? Like, great that you have a 6-month-old right now when we need to get this project done, huh?" Abe says, "Yeah, it is." Tanya's gonna come in, and it all is gonna get serious here. She puts a nice notebook and pen at the head of the table. The other guys are sort of huddled around the computer at the other end of the table. Tanya smiles. She'll be right with you. It's very like Stepford wife-ish right there. So the guys are just like, "Thank you." You can tell the second Tanya leaves this room, they're all going to be like, they're just going to like flirt. They're going to get into position. They're going to be all perfect. But first we're going to see, who's this Tanya? We're going to get introduced to her. We're going to pan up a wall. We're going to look at 2 of her diplomas. So first we're going to see the UPenn Master of Business Administration diploma, and then we're going to see her Howard University Bachelor of Arts diploma. We're going to see in the glass that's over the diplomas, we're going to see her reflection, and then Donna's comes into focus. And this is a really interesting blend too, because it's almost like we're looking at the reflection, but in the beginning, are we still seeing this part in the reflection? Tanya hands Donna the drink that she just made. She says, "Carrot, grapefruit, a little bit of ginger." Donna sips it. And then we see her profile. So for sure, this part isn't in the reflection. So she says, And then she gets down to business with Tanya. She says, "Microsoft didn't get the bump they wanted from the home announcement." Tanya says, "I know, 0.02 of a point." Tanya says, "Well, Windows is still the official OS of the White House." Tanya gives Donna a folder. Donna goes into the conference room. What I love about this opening, maybe what I love the most about this look, we're seeing Donna was even working for this. She was working for the venture capital firm at the end of season 3 as well. But now, like, then it seemed she was like resigned to it and very alone. And now she has fully stepped into her power in this office. There are people around her. She's got an assistant. She's seeing clients. She looks more polished than she did before. But Tanya, I love that we know Tanya is her assistant because she's putting flowers on her desk, and she's fixing her drinks, and she's setting up her office. She's setting up the conference room. But Tanya is so much more than her assistant. Tanya has a master's. Tanya can speak to her peer to peer about business stuff, and Donna's respecting that about her. It reminds me of Donna. Remember, season 1, Donna is a mom, but wait a minute, she's unscrewing the back of a speak and spell, and she's explaining all the components of it. I love that Donna's assistant is somebody who has skills, just the way Donna did at the start of season 1. Okay, so Donna's going to go into this conference room where the Millennium team is waiting. The guys are just sitting around the table now. They're at the other end of the table from her. They're very far away, it feels, but they're sitting down. They're buttoned up. They've mopped a bit of the sweat off of their faces, but you know that they're just barely hanging together right now. Donna's going to sit down. She says, "Good morning." She reverses her watch. I spoke with Carrie Bechet about this. She couldn't remember exactly what watch it was, but she called it like maybe an Italiano Reverso or something like that. So if you look up Reverso, you'll definitely see some watches like this. But I just love, on one side of it, it's the time. When she flips it over, it looks like it's just, you could see the actual gears. Right? Is that what I'm looking at behind it? I love this detail. Donna, when she goes into a business meeting, she wants to be the gear. She wants to be all gears and wires on the inside. And so she flips over her watch. I think you could interpret this a number of different ways, but the way I like to think of this is, you know, she wears a watch the normal way, like a normal human, but then she goes into a meeting and she says, "I'm going to be all gears and wires." And this is like a visual representation of that. She is switching. It's like maybe like 2 personalities. You might think even that the hardcore personality kind of bleeds through when she's just got the time on her hand as well. But when she goes into a business meeting, she is cutthroat. She is ruthless. She does not get emotionally invested. She will smile, but she doesn't mean it. She, you know, we're coming off of the end of season 3. She has this scene in the car where Kim has just ousted her, or forced her to oust herself from her own project that she just started with you know, all the people in her world. Donna is so hurt. She walks out. She goes to her car. She's crying. She's pounding the steering. Damn it. And then she sucks it all back in. She wipes the tears off of her face. She looks in the mirror. She fixes her hair. She gets herself all prim and proper. She literally sucks her emotions back into the core. And this is the Donna we got. This person who now is going to say, that is the last time I was going to get emotionally invested in business. It's like she's made a deal with herself to never again feel something personal in a business room. So here we are. This is the reminder. Nope, I'm going to be a robot. I'm going to be a machine. I'm going to be all gears and wires, and that is it. And yeah, it's a cool detail. And so we're going to see, she reverses her watch in this room. She sits, she just waits for them to talk. And the lead from the Millennium team is like, "First off, thanks for calling us in this morning. Believe me, if you hadn't reached out, we would have been bothering you to get in here because we're just so darn excited about some of these steps we're taking to surpass Mosaic." Oh, he's just like, just mopping sweat off his face at this point. They're all smiling and nodding. Yep, we were just so excited. They look terrified. By the time we are done fully implementing, it'll be like, Mosaic? What's Mosaic? he snaps. One of the other guys puts a computer in front of him. The Millennium lead says, so just to catch you up, Millennium now supports. He's bringing the computer up to Donna. She just waves, put the computer down in front of her. It's so, it's so like, I don't know. I feel like back at the, I don't know. I feel like there's like, it's like a royal move, like, and he just lowers the computer down in front of her. Okay. He says, right, okay, so inline images. We got a stop button right there to halt web page loads. See, she's staring at it, not interacting with it, not touching it, just looking at it. She looks a little bored. He says, and we should have our very own hot list soon. Donna says, video. The Millennium lead says, yes, yes, of course. We're hard at work on that. Matter of days. All the guys nod, matter of days. We've also been proactive with our branding efforts, you know, getting our name out there. Greg the mouse pads. Donna looks on with mild interest. Mouse pads. What I want is video. She's not really that interested, but Greg hasn't moved yet. So the lead from the team is like, Greg, the mouse pads, please. Greg's body, we don't even see Greg's face, puts the mouse pad in front of Donna. And he gestures to it like a Price is Right, like assistant. She is going to look at it with a small non-smile smile. There's this beautiful shot. Interpret what you will from this. We're going to see Donna sitting at the head of the table, but there's this beautiful symmetry in the way this is lined up because she's kind of right in the middle of it. We're going to see blue sky with clouds in the top half of the frame. We're going to see the reflection of the blue sky and clouds in the conference table. And then Donna all just in black. So what a beautiful shot. That must have taken forever to, because she's not directly in front of a window. There's like a hallway behind them. It must have taken forever to line that up. Anyway, so okay, we've got Greg putting this mouse pad in front of her. The lead says, you know, well, we can use it to spread the word. And our download numbers, while not mosaics, are really starting to edge out Lodestar. So Lodestar being Gordon and Joe's product. Donna smiles. She's like, but we don't want to just be chasing mosaic, do we? You guys are too talented for that. You need to be pursuing your own vision, not aping somebody else's, right? The lead says, we couldn't agree more. Yes. Donna smiles. She laughs. Wonderful. Then we're all set. She stands. The camera is now tilted. We're going to go a little Dutch angle here. We're on their end of the room, not Donna's. Theirs looking at Donna. She says, then we're all set. I was really rooting for you guys. And she leaves the room. The lead's like, thanks, Donna. We really appreciate it. They all look at each other. And Abe says, did we just get defunded? The lead's mouth is just hanging open. I mean, a little bit of a button on this. We're going to see Donna in her office post this meeting. She reverses her watch to the time again. Can she be a normal human yet? Maybe. She takes a sip of her drink. She's holding it in front of her face. We watch the Millennium team. There's like a glass wall behind her. We can see the Millennium team file out of the office, the conference room they were just in. And they're fighting with each other. Like, oh, get your hands off of me. I said, don't touch me, Abe. She takes a sip of her drink and she smiles. You know, this is Donna. And because the way we ended in the end of season 3, I'm not at all surprised that she went hardcore like this, but damn, she's so hardcore. That team was afraid to speak with her. I mean, afraid. Probably for really good reason. And we just get this little bit like, she'll cut you and she'll do it with a smile on her face. Wow, Donna. But then she's got like the bright, like the fruits and the bright color. It's just, oh my God, so good. Okay. And now for something you didn't think you'd see on Halt and Catch Fire, the Blue Man Group. We're going to get more color. We've got water splashing, color, like colored water, colored lights, drumming. It's the Blue Man Group. They're finishing a drum performance. Everybody cheers. We are outside at some sort of a party. They're going to go into the crowd. They're going to get Gordon. They're going to take off his jacket. We know it's Gordon's 40th, so I guess this is how they're celebrating. Look, you'll find out later that this is all happening at Gordon's house. So this is all his backyard. This place looks huge. So Blue Man Group takes off Gordon's jacket. They're going to bring him to the stage. They're going to raise his arms in victory. Gordon is in front of this big crowd now. We're going to see Cam walking into this party. She's walking past a bunch of balloons. Blue Man Group puts a plastic suit on Gordon. Cam's going to put down the beers she brought. She's going to grab another beer bottle to drink out of. Blue Man Group is now putting a helmet and glasses on Gordon. He's just all suited up. Cam's watching all of this, and the Blue Man Group splashes blue paint all over Gordon while they're drumming. They hang him upside down from some rigging. How they rigged this in his backyard, I don't know. And then they're going to throw his body against this very large blank canvas. And then they're going to start spraying him with these like water guns or guns filled with paint. One of them still playing the drums, and one of them has red paint, one of them has yellow paint. They're spraying Gordon in the canvas. He's just like wriggling so that you can get all the different effects. Cam is watching all of this. And then they take him off of the rigging. They hold up his arms in victory again. Gordon's like, yeah. He wipes some paint off of his face, and then he's going to see Cam all the way at the back of the party standing alone. He's going to start walking up to her, and she's going to raise a beer bottle to him. I just want to say for a moment, like this, we're going to see a little bit more from the Blue Man Group as we go through, but they must have done a whole show here. I've heard from a few of the interviews now, or some number of the interviews with cast and crew, that people have talked about the Blue Man Group being on set and just being the Blue Man Group the whole time. So what an interesting partnership collaboration. So cool. I don't know how this happened, but it's awesome. And I actually was just recently going back through the Blue Man Group's social media, scrolling down to this time, and they did a fair amount to say like, hey, we were on Halt and Catch Fire. So cool. Anyway, okay. So Gordon now is talking to Cam. He says, well, look who it is. Cam says, I was on the company invite list. Gordon's like, so you do get emails. He's going to take a drink. She doesn't know what to say. At the same time, he says, have you seen Mosaic? And she says, I saw Mosaic. This is the way everybody starts conversations here, I guess. She's going to smile and nod. He says, I haven't heard from you in 5 months. Now you're just here. She gulps. He says, honestly, I didn't even know you were in the country. She says, yeah, I'm sorry. I should have, I thought I was going to find time to talk to you. I didn't know the party was going to be so. He's like, it's okay. Don't worry about it. To be honest with you, I'm not even that mad. Joe's going to kill you. Kim says, is he here? Gord says, Joe McMillan at a party? You've been out of the loop for a while. She nods. He takes a drink. Boz comes into the scene. This is so interesting to me. Boz is so excited to see Cameron. He's like, well, come on. We hear his voice first. He like jumps on her. He gives her a big hug from behind. She's like, he says, hey, what the heck are you doing here? My God, look, it's Cameron. Diane comes up with him. She is much more reserved. She does not touch Cam. She nods to Cam, basically. Cam is very bashful. She's like, I'm doing some promotion for my new game. Boz is like, yeah, the Pilgrim, sure. I've seen it. Looks spooky. And he says it to Gordon, like, you've seen Pilgrim, right? Gordon nods, yeah. Boz has so much enthusiasm about Cam being here. The others do not. Diane says to Cam, by the way, John absolutely loved that sailing compass. I was like, oh, yeah. Boz says, sure, I got it mounted right on the bulkhead. And then he says to Diane, we gotta go over there and see those guys sometime soon. Diane nods politely, discreetly. Boz says, once Diane figures out how to make it a business write-off. Diane's like, gee, John, thanks. Boz says, I'm kidding. Cam says, oh, I mean, you guys are welcome whenever you want. I just saw Joni, so I'm going to go say hi. So she makes an excuse. She leaves right quick. Boss says, okay, good to see you. I want to pause there for a second. Yeah, I think I'll pause there for a second. First of all, the last time, 310, we saw Cam visit Boz, and he was not happy to see her. He was very aloof. He did not hug her. He did not touch her. They were awkward with each other. He is so happy to see her right now. So I'm assuming that she now stayed in touch with him, that the fact that they reconnected even in that weird way at the end of season 3, maybe she thought, I don't want to lose this relationship. And she stayed in touch with Boz. She's gotten him a gift. I don't think a gift alone makes him hug her the way that he did here when he didn't hug her at the end of season 3. So I feel like she stayed connected with him through maybe talking on the phone, maybe email. But by the end of this episode, we know that Tom has left her. So for Boz to say, Diane, we should go visit Tom and Cam in Japan, means she hasn't told him that. She's not telling him everything. They've just maybe stayed a little bit in touch. She got him this sailing compass. She knows that he's been sailing. She's been keeping at least some track of that. Diane is extremely reserved. She does not have the enthusiasm for Cam that Boz has, because Diane works with Donna. And she probably knows what impact Cam has had on Donna. And so she's not going to be hugging Cam at a party. I think she has some amount of loyalty to Donna in this situation. It's just really interesting grouping. Again, we've jumped forward in time, and it's up to us to piece together what we're getting from these clues. They're not hitting us over the head with exposition. So you have to pull the little details that you're getting from wherever you can. But we also find out very directly that Diane and Boz have been sailing a whole bunch, which we heard at the end of season 3 as well. So we've got all those pieces. And we now know, if you've got all the way to the end of this episode and you know that she's no longer with Tom, Cam is no longer with Tom, then when Boz mentions going to visit her and Cam in Japan, that's going to get real weird, and she's going to want to end this conversation, which is why she goes to find Joni. So Gordon, he's getting a snack. Boz is still there with Diane as well. And Gordon's like, hey, when are you going to take me out on that boat? Boz is like, oh, we'll get you out there soon, Captain. Gordon says, I'm going to go get cleaned up. He's all covered in paint. He makes his excuse to leave. Boz's like, yeah, you need it. Gordon says goodbye, and he leaves Boz and Diane there. They're surveying this party. Diane says, by the looks of all this, Calnut puts down, 50, 60 million a year? Boz says 60, well, hell, 75 now that they're down in Arizona. So they've got even another location that they've opened up. So Calnut is doing well enough. It's not just keeping the lights on. Diane says, still 25 ISP competitors in the landscape and growing, and Calnut isn't a member of the CIX and won't be anytime soon. Look, for me, that's all another language. For you, if it's not, great. Tell us all what we need to know from this. But what I interpret from this is there's a lot of competition in the market that, Gordon got Gordon Joe into. There's some sort of a conglomerate or an association, maybe is the word that I want there, of some of the competitors. And Kalnuk is outside of that, operating on its own. And so Diane's thinking maybe there's some risk involved, I think, with all this. Boss says, well, yeah, Gordon's pretty good at watching his hen house. I wouldn't worry. Dan says, John, all I'm saying is that with AOL coming to town, all of this seems overly optimistic, don't you think? Boz considers that. Look, we even the joke that Boz made earlier with Diane in front of everybody about how, you know, we'll go to Japan once Diane can figure out how to make it a business write-off, really shows you who's pulling down the money in that partnership. Who's wearing the pants, or at least financially, in that partnership. So here's Diane surveying it, and she seems to think there's a bit of risk in this for Kalnecht. Okay, now we're going to go inside the house, because again, all of this was in Gordon's backyard, and Cam wanted to find Joni, and she's going to find Joni. So we're going to go into the living room. We're going to see Joni and some of her friends, and Haley, who's like kind of just separate from everybody else. But they're playing video games, and Joni sees Cameron. She's like, oh my God, Cameron. And she runs up to Cam. She's like, oh my God, it's Cameron. She is so like, look, she's a teenager in the mid 90s, I guess, almost to mid 90s. And she looks the part. She's got some real style here. She says, I can't believe you're here. Cam's like, okay. She's like taking the hug. She's like, okay. We see Haley sitting there watching. Cam hasn't seen that yet. Joni's like, oh my God, guys, listen, this is Cameron. Like Cameron Howe, the Cameron Howe. Her friends are very impressed. Joni's like, she invented Space Bike. Cam nods. Joni's like, and what's the other one called? Cam says Pilgrim. Okay, so that game is Pilgrim. Joni's like, right, that's so cool. One of the guys is like, do you want to play Mortal Kombat? Joni is like, yeah, you want to play Mortal Kombat? Cam says, oh no, you guys go ahead. She's had enough of people playing violent games and not Pilgrim. Anyway, so we're going to see now Cameron and Joni from like the camera is set up behind the couch that everybody's sitting on, looking out at Cam and Joni, maybe putting us in Haley's perspective, sort of. Cam is now going to see Haley, who is staring at Joni and Cam. Not even, this is not how you greet somebody that you used to know when you were a little kid. Cam's like, Haley? Haley looks very uncomfortable. She's like, hi. And instead of going to Cam to hug her or say, exchange more words, she just leaves the room. She like squeaks and runs away is basically what happens there. The room is a little tilted because like it's all too much for Haley. She's left. She's like, hi. The Cam says hi. But Haley just left. So Cam looks back at Joni. She's like, what? Joni just rolls her eyes. Like, that's my sister. Joni is going to try to speak a little bit of Japanese with Cam. Cam is like, oh, very impressive. And they laugh. And she says, I've been practicing off those CDs you sent. And Cam says, oh, and then she says something in Japanese. And then Joni tries to say something in Japanese, but Cam laughs. She's like, oh no, what did I say? Cam says, you said I was an awesome carrot. And they laugh. Joni sees that Cam is sort of looking around awkwardly. Joni says, you don't have to worry, my mom's not here. So just a reflection on this moment. This is the first time we're seeing older Haley, played by Susanna Skaggs. We're getting that she is awkward socially, at the very least. Even with somebody that she knows or knew. I mean, she spent some time with Cam. She lived with Cam when she was younger. And still she doesn't even feel comfortable to go up to Cam here. So there's something that's kind of cut from a similar cloth to Cam, maybe, to be honest. I mean, Cam has dealt with anxiety. We've seen that. I don't know if this is some sort of social anxiety for Haley. But Joni when those two girls were younger, we saw that Cam and Joni had a wonderful bond. We saw a number of scenes where they were sort of connecting with each other. And so there's a real I think there's a real admiration for Cam from Joni. And that obviously has continued with, Joni is interested in Japanese. She's, like she's been following Cam's journey with these games. She really kind of idolizes Cam. And so it's fun to see them interacting here. It's a relationship that feels, I don't know, it feels kind of nice to have something like that in this show. All right, so we're going to see Gordon standing and chatting with some guys. We're going to see Joe come up wearing his leather jacket, all still outside. Joe comes in for an awkward hug for Gordon. He's still like kind of hunched over, and like he's going to basically swallow up Gordon whole. Gordon like, hey man. Joe says, hey. Gordon says, good to see you. I didn't think you'd make it. Just says, glad to know I can still surprise you. Gordon says, so no present? Joe says, actually, I did get you something. He holds up an AOL online CD. And Gordon's like, I was kidding though. Joe says, a whole box of them was at the front counter at Blockbuster. Blockbuster! I just enjoy when they make reference to all these companies that we don't see it anymore. Gordon takes the CD. He's like, Jesus, AOL's everywhere now. They were. Joe says, I'm in this fight with you. He nods at Gordon. He says, but I want Shep's office. It gets the most sunlight. So I guess the present here was more the willingness to work with Gordon upstairs, more so than the CD. The CD was just a gesture. Okay, so Gordon's like, done. Joe's smiling back at him, and then Gordon gets serious because Gordon has to be the bearer of bad news. Cameron's here. And the smile just leaves Joe's face. And he stands there reeling. So now Joe is networking with somebody because now we need to see what's going to happen here, right? So Joe is looking at a Post-it with a URL on it. So he's like, okay, so I've got http://cad.ucla/edu/repository/bonsai/html. The bonsai enthusiast says, yep, that's it. So you're a fellow bonsai enthusiast? And I was like, Joe's like, no, but I'm going to check out your website. Joe turns around, that guy goes away. So I guess all of those Post-its, it was all URLs. When he turns around, he sees Cam. Cam has found him. She is going to come up very gingerly, very slowly, like, I don't know if this conversation's going to be okay. And then he is going to turn forward, basically a quarter turn, so that he's not facing her. Like, I don't want to talk to you, is the vibe. So she's going to be very careful here because, you can't just walk away at this point. She says, I heard you didn't come to parties anymore. Joe is very quiet. He's practically whispering for this conversation. He says, it's Gordon's birthday. She nods. She's going to turn to look in the same direction that he is. Joe says, how's Tom? Cam says, Tom is good. He just got promoted to the head of development at Sega. So Joe's like, that's great. Now, we know now, having seen the rest of this episode, that she doesn't really know how Tom is. She's not with him, but she's not saying that here because you just don't. It puts too much, like, don't put that into this conversation. So she's keeping that to herself. Cam now turns to look at him again. She's very quiet. She says, you're mad at me. We're going to hear the song Happy Birthday starting. Happy birthday, happy birthday. So we've got that playing for the rest of this scene. It's such a stark contrast. What is that? Altered Images that sings that song? Um, it's such a contrast. Like it's such a, I don't know, it's such like a fanciful song. And then these two are so quiet. This is so sad to watch this scene. She says, "You're mad at me." He just breathes out and he says, just soft as can be, "Wouldn't you be?" She smiles a little bit. She nods. She looks in the same direction as he is again. She says, "Yeah, we're going to see." Like everybody else at this party is having a great time. The Blue Man Group is spraying streamers into the air just over and over and over again. We're hearing this happy birthday song. The crowd is cheering. Gordon is cheering. Joe is standing there heartbroken. Cam is standing there silent, knowing she is the creator of the heartbreak. They just stand there in awkward silence for long enough that Joe just goes, he just frowns a little bit and he nods and he says, "I gotta go." He leaves and she looks down. She created this and she knows it. Gordon shouts to everybody, "Thank you for coming." Everybody clinks their glasses, they cheers. Kim is going to turn to the bartender and ask for a whiskey. The bartender is going to pour her a whiskey, and then another incredible sequence is going to start. Look, talk about a needle drop. Whole doll parts from Live Through This. My God, what a choice. So we're going to sort of cut back and forth between Cam and Donna here, because this is another pairing that we haven't seen them interact, but their conflict just about ended the last season, almost. So what, now that we're all these years ahead, like, what does that look like for them? So we're going to see, okay, Cam now has this whiskey. We're going to hear doll parts start. You get these lyrics like, "I am doll eyes, doll mouth, doll legs. I am doll arms, big veins, dog bait." We're going to see, so Cam has taken her drink. Now we're going to see Donna's house. We're going to see the pool and the guest house. So we're looking at it from the backyard, as we've been in the backyard at Gordon's house. We can see into her house. It has this huge window, basically like it's just a glass wall. So we can see straight into her house. And Donna's having a dinner party and she's taking a drink. Cam's taking a drink. Donna's taking a drink. Remember, at the end of season 3, those last 2 episodes of season 3, Donna was so alone. Donna was either in a room all by herself or she was in a room full of people all by herself. She was at bars. She was at the Comdex party by herself. At least that was episode 9, right, of the last season. And then, interpret how you will everything that goes down in the last episode. But now she's around people. She has reintegrated as some version of herself. So she's at this dinner party. She's taking a drink. We hear the song, "Yeah, they really want you. They really want you. They really do." We've got people chatting at Donna's party. We've got Cam sitting alone with a drink in her hand watching TV. So Donna's now in a social environment. Cam is not, sort of a flip from the Comdex episode. We're going to get an overhead shot of Donna at her party laughing and drinking. Cam is drinking. Donna is drinking. Everybody's drinking. So much alcohol. "I want to be the girl with the most cake," the song says. Donna is talking with one particular guy. She's flirting. Song says, "He only loves those things because he loves to see them break." Donna is saying goodbye to her guests as they file out the door one at a time. Gordon is bringing in blankets for Cam to sleep on his couch. He's putting them down. Donna is flirting with the guy who's putting on his jacket. I really liked the sort of the, not symmetry, sort of like the reversal. Gordon putting down the blankets, the guy putting on his jacket. Donna smiles at the guy and she shuts the door. We see it from outside the house because she's got basically a glass door. So the camera is outside the door, watching her shut it from inside. And then we can see the guy just sort of process that. And he takes his jacket back off. The song says, and someday you will ache like I ache. And we're good. That refrain repeats many, many times as we continue to watch. Donna is now hooking up with this guy in bed. Gordon is handing the blankets to Cam. Donna having sex. She's smiling. Is it a real smile? Is it a fake smile? Gordon's giving Cam more blankets in a very non-sexual way. The song is still, someday you will ache like I ache becomes a little lower so we can hear Cam say to Gordon, am I cruel? She's thinking about what the interaction she just had with Joe. Gordon stops with the pillow. He was trying to get the pillow into the pillowcase for a moment. He just looks at her. He says, of course not. What is on the TV here that she's been watching? There's like a raging fire in this scene. It's like a courtroom scene with a raging fire. But it's not the court that's on fire. It's like some other blend of, I don't know. What is that? So Gordon's like, why would you ask that? He puts the pillow in the case, puts it behind her. He leaves the room. She just lays back. And someday you will ache like I ache. And we're looking at her. She's staring up. We're not directly over her because I think we've seen that shot before and that implies something different. We're sort of off to the side of her a little bit as she's just staring up. This feeling of like, the doll parts, I think in this context, it's not necessarily the exact context that the original song was meant, but in this context, it's like there's a certain amount of like, what's fake, what's real, that sort of contrast between the fakeness of these doll parts and then like the real ache inside. Donna's got this smile plastered on, but there's just clearly like so much pain that she's pushed all the way down. Both of these ladies are drinking. How they're interacting with other people looks very different here. And just to linger on this, like, and someday you will ache like I ache, and you've got these very different coping mechanisms. Cam being kind of alone in this room right now, and Donna is, turned to social interactions and hooking up and maybe drinking and being mean in conference rooms and but being businesslike, and we're just scaring her teams. It's so different the way this is evolved, but I absolutely believe how this has evolved. And I think both of these things are coming from a lot of pain. And everybody's just handling their pain very differently. Joe is handling it differently as well. If anything, I'd say he's got the most bitterness of the group that's just like out in the open. All right. In the morning, Cam's going to wake up and we're going to hear the sound of Mario Kart. Cam groans. Gordon's playing. She's like, what time is it? He says, crack of noon, rise and shine. She groans. She rolls over. We're going to see them from overhead for a second in that room. She's, God, you're a monster. Gordon's like, well, Pete can give you a ride home if you need one. And she's like, who's Pete? He says, my driver, you'll love him. He used to be a city tax planner and loves books on tape. I'm glad that they give us that touch here because, it just helps us understand that these are some of the precautions that he's been taking for his illness. Cam says, is it dark in the car? Can I sleep in there with the AC on? Gordon's like, of course, as long as you're all right with the dulcet tones of Robert Ludlum thrillers. Those are the books on tape that his driver likes. Gordon's trying to play this game. He's like, man, Donut Plains 3 is impossible. So many donut references in this show. No wonder I like it. Donut Plains 3, come on. Cam sits up. She's like, battle mode? He throws a controller in her direction. He says, yeah, you're wrong. She's going to stand. She's going to come over, sit next to him, grab the controller. Gordon's like, all right, you got to pick a guy. She's going to pick Toad. We're going to watch her do it. Like, Toad, really? She says, he corners the best. I was like, interesting. We're going to see them playing. Cam says, okay, there's a decent chance this is going to make me barf. Aaron says, well, you and Joni are in the same boat this morning. I guess Joni had a little bit to drink last night, which, she's certainly underage. Well, actually, no. Yeah, she's underage for drinking, but let's see. It's also, so she was 14 when we saw her at the end of season 3. So what? She's now what, like 17, 18, somewhere in there? Okay. So Cam is going to throw a banana peel in the game. He's like, whoa, you can throw banana peels? How'd you get so good at this? And she's like, I got my hands on a prototype cartridge about a year and a half ago. And then she looks around the room because we're going to see more of the living room. She's like, wow, you really brought the Southwest in here, didn't you, Gordon? She means the decor. I guess there's a lot of Southwest decor in there. He says, easy. How much longer are you in town for? She said, I don't know, but if you want to see the craziest thing, you should swing by the focus group testing for my new game. It's like Altered States, but with market research instead of LSD. Altered States. So it was not altered images, it was altered states. They are the ones who sing that happy birthday song that we heard earlier. Gordon says, that damn game better be good. She looks back at him. She pauses the game because, she had a perfectly fine conversation with Gordon the night before. It was sort of like, a little bit walking on eggshells, but it wasn't bad. But here Gordon's like, yeah, if you've been working on this game instead of working with us, it better be good. She pauses the game and she reaches down to grab something. She hands him a disc of her game. She says, here, you tell me if it's good. Gordon looks at it. He says, Pilgrim. He says, he's like, She says, well, I'm glad you're doing so well, Gordon. He sips his coffee. He's like, yeah, I'm doing really great. I mean, last night I got to be a human paintbrush. He's laughing. She's like, I saw that. He says, Calnecht is kicking ass. She says, well, I'm sorry that Lodestar has to be the exception. He says, if I'm being totally honest, as time wore on, the browser became more of a side project for me. It's always been Joe's baby. She leans back. Oh, don't mention Joe. She's like, I saw him last night. Gordon says, and she says, oh, Gordon, it didn't go well. Gordon says, well, that's probably for the best. She wasn't expecting that. And she says, for who? Gordon lifts his forehead and says, honestly, for him. She nods, a horn honks. Pause for a second. So we now know by the end of this episode that Tom left her. And hearing, like, what does she want from Joe, really? For Gordon is under the assumption that she's still with Tom, so doesn't even know that what he's saying could be landing in a different way. But for him to say, yeah, it's probably better that you two aren't around each other at all. It's probably better that you're not like continuing to have a presence in Joe's life. Like if she came there with any thought about Joe, it's like, oh man, Gordon's not rooting for this. I don't know that she is rooting for the situation with Joe, but Gordon would not approve from where he's sitting right now. Okay, so a horn honks. Gordon's like, oh shit. She says, what? And so he gets up. He's like, the girls haven't left yet. He's going to shout upstairs, Joni, Haley, come on, let's go. He's trying to get the girls out of the house so Donna doesn't come inside. Cam shifts. She's like, oh my God, Gordon. Gordon's like, no, she never comes in. Don't worry, meaning Donna. We're going to hear some honking again. Haley's going to file out of the house. She doesn't even really say goodbye to us. She's like, doesn't hug her dad at all. She just leaves. We're like, all right, see you Wednesday. And then he's going to shout up to Joni. Joni, let's go. Joni's taking a while. So he is going to go upstairs to try to grab her. Donna knocks and just enters the house. Cam doesn't know where to go. She's like, where do I hide? But she doesn't have time to do that. So Donna is like, Gordon? She turns and she sees Cam in the living room. Cam smiles very awkwardly. Donna takes off her glasses. She's got the I just came back from a tennis game look. She's got like the sweater wrapped around her neck. I was like, oh. Cam just breathes in. It's like, here we go. Donna says the only safe thing to say when you're seeing somebody in an awkward situation here, she says, have you seen Mosaic? Cam's a little stunned by this. Like she was ready for a lot of things, but not just like a how's the weather type of question like that. So she says, yes. And Donna is just looking at her like just unfeeling, like I will not let this affect me. Cam says, I was surprised it wasn't you. Donna was not expecting that. Cam has not at all underestimated Donna. So Gordon now comes down. Joni files past him looking somewhat unwell. He's like, hey, she may have gotten into the. Joni looks at him like, shut up, Dad. Donna's going to push her out the door. She says, thanks for this. Gordon says, yeah, anytime. Cam slumps down on the couch. All the air comes out of Cam. And Gordon walks back into the living room. He's like, well, she rarely comes in. And Cam's going to throw her head back on the couch and she just sighs. All right, we've got Joe. Well, so, okay, look. Donna and Cam, I mean, it's just so charged, that scene. And there's like not a lot to it. They don't get into anything, but it's like, ooh, how's this going to go? You're waiting for the sparks to fly. But no, we're going to let this, the fuse was lit and it's just working its way closer to the dynamite, it feels like. All right, so we're going to see Joe sitting at a conference table at CalNect. He's looking at some paperwork. There's a meeting happening in here. Gordon, Joe, and some people from the team. Somebody says, as expected, the flat fee and unkept usage dinged the overall revenue initially, but now we're in the volume business. The user base just keeps growing. Joe says, then this isn't a rebound, it's sustained growth. That's good. Another team member says, the only problem is the pipe's getting tight. We're starting to clog a little bit with all that data. Just as MCI hears how well they're doing, they're going to want to renegotiate the Sweetheart deal before they give us more bandwidth on their Twisted Pair network. We could balk and try Pac-Bell, but at the end of the day, we want to keep our backbone provider happy, whoever they are. Gordon's watching Joe for all of this. For me, this is a totally different language. I think the main point with this is that Joe is sitting in a meeting related to the upstairs side of the business, and he is contributing. He's absorbing it. He's focusing in. Gordon's sort of observing all this, like hoping that this will take. Joe turns to Gordon. He says, what do you think, Gordon? Gordon says, well, if MCI wants more money, fine. We've got it. Let's give it to them. Joe just sort of looks down. Gordon says, oh, AOL's not the only one with deep pockets. Let's stay ahead of this. Shep, get a call in. And Joe, thanks for sitting in today. Joe looks at him. He smiles and he leaves. Gordon's going to sit back down. He's going to sit and we look up at the CalNect logo on the wall. So it's like the closest we've seen that CalNect logo. All right, so now we're going to see Cam. She's down in the basement at this very office. She's got some CDs in her hand. She's looking at all the Post-its on Joe's desk. I mean, if this isn't a cry for help, I don't know what is. And Cam created this. Joe comes down and sees Cam. He's like, what's this? She says, Lodestar, the CDs. He says, is that the finished browser? You've been just sitting on this, couldn't get around to handing it in? Cam says, no, I finished it last night. He says, so what? It was a day of work? Cam says, Joe, I've been working on this for weeks. He's not even looking at her. She says, you didn't have to sit around and wait for me. If you were in such a rush, you could have hired somebody else to do the coding. Joe says very firmly, like, you don't get it. I needed you. We needed you to care, but you didn't. We had almost a year on the Mosaic guys, but we blew it. And now, if you had just been here, actually been available, Cam says, well, I couldn't be here. That was the deal. Joe says, and that was a raw deal for me. And it's just a shame. It's a shame that 5,000 miles away wasn't far enough. He's so much bitterness seeping through. It's just bitter. And I like that Joe cannot speak directly about their relationship. He has to keep deflecting and talking about the project as code for their relationship, or the relationship that didn't happen. So, he's like, I needed you to work on the project. Like, she's like, but you could have gotten somebody else to work on the project with. He's like, but I needed you to work on, like, they're just, it's all just this layer. It's this code that they're talking in. Cam knows very well what they're talking about here, but Joe cannot seem to go there. She says, she actually shouts at him. She's like, what is this about? Look, I made this better than it had any right to be. And I did so while dealing with a lot of my own stuff. And the camera's going to get really close to her face. We don't know yet that Tom has left her. We'll find that out soon. But the camera gets really close to her face. It wants us all the way in her feelings. And she's not specifically giving Joe that information. Joe says, oh, right, your game, the stuff that she's dealing with is what he thinks. I'm sure that was tough being funded, promoted, coddled. I've been working alone on this, working by myself for 3 years. So he's like, look, you've got people, one of which I will not mention. Yeah, he's like, it's gotta be hard having support around you. I've been alone because you left me on this project. Yeah. She says, do you want to talk about what we're really talking about here? Joe shifts in place a little bit. Oh, she got a little too close to the real issue. He looks down, he bites his lip. The light is hitting his eyes in such a way that it almost looks like he's tearing up. I don't think that he actually is. I think he's holding that back, but the light is just hitting him in such an interesting way. He says, if we had worked on this together, it could have been amazing. He walks away from her towards her Post-its. It's like, I don't have you, but I've got all my Post-its. And he sighs. She looks very sad. She says, what do you want me to do? I mean, look what you did to this man. Like, and then look what he perpetuated and reinforced in himself. He's been obsessed with this. How many years did he need to spend not, I don't know, like Gordon provided him so many outs and he was just like, I'm staying in this basement. I'm fixating on her and that's how I'm doing it. She says, do you want to talk about what we're really talking about? He's like, I want to talk about the project as code. That's the only way I could do this, really. So anyway, she says, what do you want me to do? He says, nothing, it's too late. And I've got to get back to work. So she just shakes her head. She starts to go upstairs. She stops. She says, the way things are growing, you're going to run out of Post-its pretty soon. She goes upstairs and he watches her go. Unfortunately, that gave him an idea. So we're going to see Gordon in his office. He's walking in front of that Blue Man Group self-portrait. And he's talking to somebody in his office. He's like, well, tell Oregon they're not a big enough market for digital subscriber investments. He's going to watch as Cam walks through the main part of the office. Clearly, she just came from the basement and she's going to go out the door. And he's just observing all of this. Okay, so now we're going to get an important sequence. Donna says, let's get started. Well, it's an important sequence in that we're introducing some characters. She says, let's get started. So Donna has reversed her watch to start another meeting. She's in that conference room again with the Rover team. Elliot from the Rover team, who seems to be the team lead, he says, well, first off, let me just say on behalf of the Rover Brain Trust, it's great to see you again. We're moving past the beta phase. We're already underway in 3 med schools with requests for 2 more. He's smiling. Is it a real smile? No, this team looks terrified too. Donna is looking at him blankly. She's very backlit. It's almost hard to look at her. Elliot, God help the team that sees Donna after she just saw Cam this morning. Poor Rover. Elliot says, a little more sobering though. Like that was the good news. Here's the bad news. We've gone through our seed round just a hair faster than expected. And now Donna says you need more money. Vera from the team says, well, yes, it's either that or we let some people go, interns mostly. Donna says, here's where we get a little bit of exposition. Donna says, but this is still enterprise software, B2B, currently focused on medical records. Cecil, their coder, says, yes, through binary queries into the data pool, but we're refining comparisons to make things more versatile. Donna says, okay, I'll just cut to the chase here. I've given you enough funding for a medical database program. If you want more funding, I need a bigger idea. Vera's going to gulp. Elliot is going to look back at Vera. Donna says, let's talk again in 24 hours. Elliot's like, that's a mighty quick turnaround. Donna stands up. She says, yes, it is. And she leaves. The Rover team looks very displeased. You know she's going to get out of that room and she's going to flip that watch back around. But man, whoo! There's going to be no mercy for anybody after she just saw Cam. Okay, so now Gordon's going to come out of his office. It's late. It's after work hours. The team is gone, but Joe is in the main office area. He's in his leather jacket, as always. Joe's like, Gordon, wait. Gordon asks him, what's up? Joe says, I've got something. We can still be the door. Maybe it's not a browser. In fact, it shouldn't be. We're going to build a website that is accessible from any browser. Gordon's just shaking his head like, oh no, Joe, you said you were going to come and work with me on this Calnect stuff. Joe's like, it's like a website of websites, an index of everything, a directory. Okay, we know from a 2024 perspective that this is a very good idea. And Joe just got that because Cam was like, you're gonna run out of Post-its real soon. And it sparked something in Joe, and now Joe's up here and he's like, never mind, I don't want to be upstairs working with you anymore. I want to go back to the website stuff. So Gordon's like, what? Like the yellow pages? Joe says, yes, but more than that. I don't have the full thing yet, but Gordon's like, Joe, let me stop you right there. I thought you were back on the business, our business, this business, on the floor that you're on right now. Joe says, when are you going to wake up? Gordon's like, what? Joe says, you're sleepwalking. I mean, what the hell was that party, Gordon? Gordon says, I wanted to celebrate our success. Joe says, you're trying to convince yourself that it's okay to stop when every fiber of your being is telling you you need to keep going. Gordon starts walking away. He says, I've been telling you for years that you're a builder. You need to build, Gordon. Gordon says, you know what, Joe? I built this. I built all of this while you were downstairs in the basement screwing around with your Post-it notes. Did Cameron put you up to this? I noticed that she stopped by today. That's a good way to end this conversation. Joe just looks at him unresponding. And Gordon says, of course she did. And he walks out. So yeah, this is how this idea sparks. And this is how it gets to Gordon. And I also think it's kind of interesting saying, like Gordon saying, I wanted to celebrate our success. Because the last time anybody says, let's celebrate our success was Ryan saying that to Joe after NSFNet was interested to partner with them. And that didn't turn out great. So I don't know that Joe really values celebrating success in that same way, as much as working towards it. And he's just so fixated on the process because it's the thing that he feels like I don't know, keeps him closer to Cam. All right. So now Gordon's got all this information and he's had about enough of this. So we're going to see the next scene. Gavin, the game publisher, I don't know what his title would be. Does he work for Atari? Does he work for a testing company? So Gavin and Cam are in this testing viewing room. Cam's just eating Chinese food. They're debriefing. He says, look, all we're asking is that you put the game's controls in the manual. Cam rolls her eyes. She says, no. He says, that's it. That's what you got to do. She says, the worst thing you can do with the magic trick is explain how it works. No matter how much the audience asks, it's so much more rewarding if they discover it for themselves. You have to respect the player. Gordon, which is an interesting thing she says when we're going to see the conversation that Donna has with the Rover team later. So we'll come back to that. Gordon is going to enter the room. Cam's like, hey, Gavin is going to leave them in this room. Gordon looks into that testing area. She says, so it's a trip, huh? All this? Gordon says, Cameron, what are you doing here? Cam says, I told you, I have to promote the game. Gordon says, no, I mean, what are you doing here? This shit was all behind us. She's like, the browser? Like, she's like, can we talk about the project? Just the way Joe was like, can we talk about the project before? Gordon's like, Joe. I'm talking about Joe. You have no idea how hard he's worked to get back to where he is, how hard I've worked. And now all of a sudden, you know, you feel guilty about no showing on Lodestar. You come back into his life and you got him spinning. Kim gets a little defensive. She says, I didn't do anything. Gordon says, look, you spent 5 minutes with him in the basement and now he's convinced that you've handed him fire from the mountaintop. She looks a little concerned. And I don't think it's concerned because she got Joe spinning, but because Gordon's coming down on her like this. Gordon says, look, I'm not saying you're doing this on purpose, but every single time that you come back into his life, Kim says, I owed him that work. I owed both of you. Gordon says, you know, yesterday you asked me if you were cool. He just lets it hang. Gavin is going to knock. He's like, sorry, we have this room until 10. Cam nods. She straightens up a bit. She says, it's great to see you, Gordon. They hug each other. They're both expressionless. She leaves and Gordon's going to look after her. You know, this is Gordon saying in this room what nobody was in the position to say in 310. You know, I mean, where Joe kept wanting to deflect back to working on the, like, I'm talking about the project, Cam. I'm not talking about us. I'm talking about the project. Now Cam's doing that with Gordon. Gordon's like, I'm talking about Joe. She's like, I'm talking about the work. Nobody can meet these conversations head on, you know? And for Gordon now, it's like, look, I've seen what you've been doing. I've seen him twisting in the wind because of you. I'm done seeing that, and you need to stop it. And really, for me, that's what I feel like I was seeing in 310. And I know I came down really hard on Cam in 310, and I partly did that because I feel like I've seen so much feedback about how Tom's an asshole. But I think, like, you know, Cam, in her way, she had all that control in that room, and like she comes back into Joe's life and she's gonna leave it again real soon. We know she is. She's getting on a plane to go back to Japan with Tom. And so like to be with Tom. And so like that was there all those years ago, and she's been sort of doing variations of that ever since. Not in person, but with phone calls and not responding to any communications and going dark for long periods. And then she comes back in and she gives Joe hope. Not that she's like, just her presence is giving him hope. And I think she kind of knows that that's the effect it has. And Gordon's like, stop it. Stop being mean. He's not going to enable this anymore, and something needs to shift in this dynamic. So now it's really interesting here because we're going to get Donna and Gordon at a co-parenting dinner. First of all, camera work. The shot opens up with the camera looking through a glass of wine. Wow. Um, of all the things, who thinks of this stuff? The camera is placed in, like, with a glass of wine directly in front of it, and it's tilted. It's a Dutch angle, no less. It's reflective. It throws this sort of red coloring on the whole scene. Spectacular. So we're going to get this Donna and Gordon co-parenting scene now. They must do this periodically. Gordon says, yeah, I mean, isn't that why God created hangovers? Teach teenagers not to drink so much. So they're talking about Joni. We're looking at her through another glass. Donna says, and so here's an interesting effect that we're going to see a couple times now in this scene. We're looking at Donna through a glass. We see Donna, and there's a reflection of Gordon behind her. Donna says, drinking is one thing. Gordon says, okay, well, it's better off at home with one of us than somewhere else, right? Donna's like, Gordon, it's fine. The camera is now going to pan to Gordon on his side of the conversation. Again, we're looking through a glass, and there's a reflection of Donna behind Gordon. It's like there's always just a little bit of them kind of, in the background. At the end of season 3, I thought they were maybe potentially flirting with each other, thinking about getting back together. And here they're at a co-parenting dinner. It's very much all business, but there's sort of like, no matter what they do, there's sort of the shadow of each other in their lives. So Donna says, has she told you she's not going to college yet, or is she still just torturing me with that one? Gordon says, I think it's a positive that our daughter has such a free spirit. She laughs a little bit. She says, well, Joni is certainly resourceful. We're now going to see her straight on, no reflections. She says, you wouldn't believe the variety of household items, fruit even, she's found a way to smoke pot out of. Donna's doing other things with her fruit in terms of like having healthy drinks. Joni's using it for bongs. Gordon says, well, there's your selling point right there. She'd love Berkeley. Donna cocks her head like, get serious. Gordon says, I'll talk to her. She says, thank you. She looks at her menu. Okay, how to broach this? She says, it was weird to see Cameron the other day, especially in your sweatpants. Oh, which I did not notice. And Gordon says, oh, well, she's always had a major thing for me. Donna looks at him. She's like, get serious. She says, no. Gordon smiles. He's stirring things up. Gordon's like, well, I like that you thought that it was even a possibility. She says, you know what she said to me about Mosaic? And she said, I was surprised it wasn't you. What's that supposed to mean? Gordon says, I don't know. Her latest visits got Joe jumping up and down about some new idea. What is it for Gordon with this? Like, the people in his world they can't stop talking about Cameron. He's like, look over there, look over here. Isn't this a funny joke? Let me tell you about what's happening upstairs in the office. And they're like, Cameron, I want to talk about Cameron. So he says her latest visits got Joe jumping up and down about some new idea. She says, of course. He says, I mean, he suddenly thinks he should index every website in existence. This is important. I was like, how would you even do that? Gordon says, trust me, he's been meticulously building a list of URLs by hand for the last 3 years. Donna's like, that sounds awfully tedious. He says, well, Joe, dog with a bone. Donna says, that he is. And Cameron loves to shit out rainbows to distract from her asshole behavior. Once again, bringing it back to Cam. It's like, don't you try to change the subject, Cameron. Gordon says, wow. Nobody likes to talk about Cameron. Donna says, I'm going to do the salmon. You? Oh my God. Gordon says, sounds good. I'll do the same. Here's to Mosaic. They clink their glasses. And he says, and to the respective death of our competing browsers. Donna smiles, and we see Gordon in her reflection. So the chain of events here went, Cam's in the basement, Joe's office, and she's like, you're going to run out of Post-its soon. There's so many URLs up here. And then Joe's like, aha, idea. And then he goes up to Gordon. He's like, I've got an idea, Gordon. And then Gordon says to Donna, Joe's got an idea because of Cameron. And now we're going to see the Rover team meeting. They had 24 hours to come up with a bigger idea. and they're in the conference room with Donna. Elliot is walking up to her smiling. The light in this scene is weird and interesting. There's so much light on their faces. It doesn't look like it's quite golden hour, but it's like their faces, it's like blown out on their faces, but then there's also shadows, and then there some of them are sitting behind blinds, so there's like lines on their faces. It's wild. Elliot says, good news, we nailed it. Magazines. The camera's all tilted here. Something's amiss. He says, we use the algorithm for the medical indexing program to index back catalogs of major publications, one magazine at a time, and voila, a trove of text documents with an unstructured data problem just waiting to be solved. Donna is in a very smart yellow like suit jacket and skirt. She stands, she's like, nope, that's not it. She has a very specific idea of what she wants their idea to be. Vera from the team is nervous. She's like, oh, well, we also discussed a legal service, backlogs of briefs and precedents. Elliot kind of looks back at Vera like, that's not the idea we said. He's like, we'll see. Donna says, look, this is all dead data. Elliot swivels his head to Donna. She says, what's growing? What can we apply the algorithm to that's dynamic? She's looking at Cecil now, the coder. She says, we're in the future business here. She looks at Elliot. Elliot says, I don't know how to index. I don't know how we index live data. Cecil, so Donna says, well, that's unfortunate. She touches her watch to flip it back over. These folks are about to be defunded, just like we saw with the Millennium team. Cecil jumps in to rescue them. He says, well, what about the web? Donna stops in her tracks. Not flipping the watch over now. She turns back to Cecil. She says, he says the number of websites has grown 500% this year alone. By next year, it could grow exponentially. We're going to alternate now between scenes from this meeting and Gordon holding up a Post-it in his hand. Cecil says, at that point, the data pool's theoretically limitless. We'd have to adjust the algorithm, but we could endeavor to index the entire web, make it searchable. Donna says, and how would you index it? Like, yeah, we're on the right track. You just keep saying the thing you need to say. Cecil says, with the algorithm. He's walking towards Donna. He's onto something that she likes. He says it'd be fully automated and computerized. That'd mean it'd be up to date almost instantly with every new site addition. The team, again, half in shadow, half in light on each of their faces. Gordon's still looking at his Post-it. Donna sighs. She says, not so reluctantly, that's it. That's the idea. Like, twist my arm, why don't you? She leaves and Elliot pats Cecil on the back. You did it, the hero. Basically, Cecil just said the exact idea that Donna was trying to get them to say. So I don't know, like, to me, it doesn't feel like this is if she hadn't just had this conversation with Gordon, I don't know if the magazine indexing idea would have been enough. But her only mission here was to compete. Like, she sees Cam the day before. She's fired up about Cam. She gets this idea from Gordon. Joe's going to work on it because of Cam's idea. Maybe she thinks Cam's going to be involved in the idea, and she wants to directly compete with this. And she's trying to get Rover to be the vehicle. All right, so we're going to see Cam on a bed with the yellow pages. She's looking at the yellow pages. She's making notes. I can't make out most of what's in her notes, but I see Bacon and Associates at the top. She is wearing this really long navy sweater, no pants. The phone rings. You know, it's hard to say what room she's in right now. It looks a little like a hotel room to me, just in terms of this one room we're seeing, but we don't really know. The phone rings. She's going to pick it up. She doesn't even speak into it. She's just sitting upright. We hear Joe say, don't tell me the reward for solving the Enzo puzzle was getting transported back to the beginning of the game. He's playing Pilgrim. Kim smiles. She lays back against the headboard. She says, I'm afraid I've got some bad news for you. Joe, we're going to see him at home at his desk in front of his computer. He says, oh, so the Enzo is a 0 and I've got to start over. And he's smiling. Kim says, or maybe it means everything. Now you can approach the path you've taken in an entirely new way. I mean, what happened for Joe in between the conversation that he had with her and this? Like, he gets this idea. What makes him think? I don't know. I think he just is thinking like, I don't want that to be my last, like, I don't want Cam to walk out of my life forever. He wants to maintain this connection. He wants to maintain, I don't think that hope goes away even with this conversation they're having right now. But she says, now you can approach the path you've taken in an entirely new way. Talk about, I don't know, is that a hint? Or is that what she's feeling right now? Joe says, I'm sorry about the other day. We see Cam taking that in. He says, I was just having trouble believing that the browser was done. We see him again. He says, and now I know that is over now. She puts her head back like, oh, I don't know if she wants it to be over now. We are going to see him, camera angle switches here. We're going to see him from another room of his place, up in the ceiling lights, looking kind of down at him. He says, regardless, I don't want 5 months or 5 years to go by before I hear from you. She sighs with her eyes closed. He says, so don't disappear again. We see him. He says, I want to know you in my life. We're going to see Cam. She says, you already know me, Joe. We see Joe smiling, and then we see her again, and she's so reluctant. She's like, do I say it? Do I say it? Do I say it? She says, I'm not going back to Japan. Joe looks up. We see her face up close. She's very vulnerable. She says, Tom left me. Joe absorbs that. He is alert. Hope is back. He's going to go. What does he say? He's going to say something. And we can see this shot from the side of Joe. He's trying to figure out what to say, and Pilgrim is playing in the background. Gordon saying to Cam, like, what are you doing back here? Was she aiming for this? She's seen how much Joe has been struggling with this. She knows that he still has feelings. Whatever possessed him to get on the phone today and have this conversation, like, he doesn't want her to walk out of his life forever. But I don't think, when he says, I just needed to accept that the browser project is really done. I think just by keeping her in his life, I think the hope still is going to be there for him. I don't think he can just quit that cold turkey. I think this obsession would continue. I think this would just be him saying, no, don't worry, I'm putting it behind me, to make her comfortable to stay in his life. I don't know. But now she's gone there. She's like, not going back to Japan. Tom's not in my world anymore. It's like, there's nothing stopping us. I don't know. She put that out there, and he's like, there's this real, man, this has gone wrong so many times. Like, is there really trust here? Is this a thing? Is this the right circumstances, or is this just wrong forever? What a place to end that episode. Oh my goodness. There's a lot of feedback. So I'll just say, okay, music, 2 things. Music for this episode, we start with Doll Parts by Hole. That's from 1994. So if we're in 1994, that's kind of perfect, right? This is that, cutting between Donna at the dinner party and Cam getting set up on Gordon's couch. Also, we have Happy Birthday by Altered Images, which is from 1991. All right, that's at Gordon's birthday party. Favorite quotes. A few things jumped out at me, a bunch of Cam stuff. So a few honorable mentions here. Cam saying this isn't a game you play, it's a game you live. That feels fair. Joe saying, well, or Gordon saying, Joe, you've been down here for almost 3 years and it's still just you, an ergonomic chair, and 500 post-its. Gordon just telling it like it is, you know? I like that. We've got Joe saying, it's a shame that 5,000 miles away wasn't far enough. Joe's so bitter in this episode. And then Cam saying, the worst thing you can do with a magic trick is explain how it works. That whole like set of lines she had there were quite beautiful. We've got a line of bitterness from Donna. And Cameron loves to shit out rainbows to distract from her asshole behavior. That might have been my top line, except the problem with that is that I put my favorite line in a post in a graphic on Instagram every week, and that's not a line I'm going to put in a post on Instagram. So I did not choose for that to be my favorite line, pretty much for that reason. So instead, what I chose is a line from Cam as my favorite line of the episode, which is, now you can approach the path you've taken in an entirely new way. Which feels like it's, you know, to end the opening episode of season 4 with a line like that, or at least towards the end of it, is, I feel like, setting up an entire season. Because, you know, ultimately we're dealing with the same set of characters, right? We've done like almost every combination of pairings, groupings here. And so wherever we go from here, we're sort of recharting territory we've been down before, but I'm saying maybe we can approach it in a new way. Like the pairings aren't different, but we're different. Okay, so much feedback about this episode, and I'm pretty stoked to get into this. There's a lot to unpack, especially from the last episode. So I wanted to really think about the feedback that you all contributed to look at this from some different angles here. So first of all, we're going to get some feedback from Synthetic Gerbil. Looking at 309 feedback to start with. In the game development world, Cameron wouldn't be considered an Atari employee. Atari would be the publisher and Cameron the developer. Unless the publisher buys out the company, you aren't beholden as a developer to the publisher, other than either invested the money in the development or agreed to publish after it was built with an exchange of money. Sometimes games end up having to switch publishers before release and things change, but the game development time wasn't anywhere as long as in 1990. So that's probably not something that happened as much then. While Atari was early on developing in-house and publishing their own games, they had been known for publishing games for a while by then and continued to be a big publisher throughout the 90s and early 2000s. So that helped answer a question where it was like, what is this relationship exactly between Cam and Atari? And I think the way Synthetic Gerbil explained that, it feels a little bit like book publishing as well. So there's that. But more broadly on 309, Synthetic Gerbil says, I just love this episode, a masterful time jump. As you say in the podcast, it feels as if we're starting with a season premiere the way everything was presented. And also, as you say, the show is making us work for the information, keeping us totally engaged at this point. I think it's a bold choice to do a time jump at this point in the season, and somehow Halt and Catch Fire pulls it off. Because as we see, there's actually another time jump starting with season 4, but it very much feels like season 4 begins here and makes room for the story to breathe and get that graceful landing to the end. Television constraints be damned. Yeah, I mean, I shared some feedback earlier about the time jumps, but my goodness, to do 2 in a row, just a couple episodes apart, is brave. It's a big choice. I think it's especially brave to do it in 309 because you're only a couple episodes away from the end of the season. But to do it again here in close succession, it's just, and then to have this, I think, a real challenge that they must have issued in the writer's room of how do you do this with the least possible exposition? Just brilliant. Some feedback about 310. You know, some of your early comments in this, and also considering some of the events in the future, for better or for worse, is Donna now perpetually looking for her way in to Cam? It's an interesting question, right? The way in is an expression we all tend to use now because there was an episode titled that, and it was Joe saying he was looking for a way in. So now, is Donna looking for a way in? Was she? I think for sure she was in 309 to 310, right? I mean, I think she had spent years feeling very alone, feeling really regretful, and trying to figure out how to make amends specifically with Cam. She was looking for a project that she could work with Cam on. She found it with the World Wide Web. She tried to approach her with that. She was looking for a way in. It was going to be something. And now, I don't know if she wants her way into Cam. I think she wants to pulverize Cam. I think she wants to obliterate her from her world. She's certainly very angry, but I think she wants to dominate Cam in any way that she can find to do professionally. I don't know. Yeah, Donna's rough right now. Okay, another thought in my head. I got the feeling at some point off camera, Gordon and Cam must have either talked on the phone, emailed, or used the ham at the very least. I just don't get the feeling that Gordon is the type of guy who wouldn't check on her at least once. So in 310, when I was like, like it feels like they aren't on just like getting to know you again footing at the beginning of 310. It feels like they've had some interaction, I guess, at least for Synthetic Gerbil. And I would agree with that. I think he's excited to see her at the start of the episode, but it doesn't feel like they're like doing all that, like, let's talk about the drapes and the weather, like some of the other characters are having to do. And it's the same thing that's happening for me with where Boz is in this episode, because he seems like he's been in touch with Cam. Okay, Synthetic Gerbil continues. The whole open source copyright, whose positions are switching conversation, a lot of people weighed in on, because particularly my views about Cam, I was like, is Cam changing her position? A lot of people provided feedback on this. Synthetic Gerbil provided some technical feedback that I wanted to share here because it's giving some more nuance to the discussion for me. So he says, I think Cam's motivation concerning copyright is that the internet cannot be done without major aspects being open source. What was happening with the extract and defend fight from season 2 was not copyright per se, but that Cam had programmed in copy protection in the game to protect the copyright. Inherently, all published games Cam has done back to Parallax would be copyright to her or Mutiny, but that doesn't necessarily mean she put in copy protection in every single one. In my previous comment, I mentioned a few ways this was done. I don't think Cam is necessarily changing her mind from one way to the other here, other than maybe she thinks some stuff may be better open source and some stuff might be better held as owned by a private entity. I think a lot of programmers don't just choose a side the way Tom does here. Ultimately, my take on Tom being so down on open source code or software in this episode is much in alignment with yours, Melissa, that people can change their mind, whether for emotional or practical reasons. We don't always know what drives their change in opinions. Maybe it's easier for some to point to specific lines to say Tom is written inconsistently. However, if you look towards even him just wanting to sell Mutiny, despite not personally wanting that, the driving force is wanting to provide for his mom. So his ideals aren't necessarily firm. Even in this episode, he may be laying on his dislike of open source a little thick, just because within him, he wants to be contrary to Joe. Really, so not only do I appreciate this, if you want more information about open source, there are more comments from Synthetic Gerbil in this thread. So go to the comments from 309 from 310, and you will find more information about open source, copyright, copy protection, that whole bit. You'll get more from a technical standpoint there. But yeah, I think as I was reading what Synthetic Gerbil was saying, I was seeing like I was conflating some things. For me, the broader conversation is still like, do you like how much of the control do you release to people? And I do think that's still it sort of encapsulates the whole conversation, but the technical terms here matter. And so it feels to me like we are landing in a place where it's like not that unusual for a lot of reasons for Tom to be talking the way that he's talking. It doesn't feel like a switch in his character. This feels like there are good reasons why his character feels this way and is communicating this way in that episode. For Cam, I was feeling like she's reversed her position, but synthetic gerbil is providing some nuance to this that suggests like maybe don't conflate these terms and it still works. Now, of course, we get some feedback from Amelia Flowers. Let's start with 308 for Amelia's feedback. And there's a specific reason I'm bringing this one in here, but let me talk through it. Joe reading Ryan's manifesto with Gordon. I'd always thought Gordon is so cold to Joe, and I'd be interested to get other people's point of view. Perhaps it's shock, or it was just a snapshot, and we're to assume that there was so much more. I guess thinking about it, Gordon does say, how many more times are you going to read that? So he'd been with Joe for a while. Maybe the police called him to be there with Joe, as from that first shot, Joe was in deep shock. I can't help but feel so terrible for Joe being alone in that apartment when everyone had left. From working there with Ryan so closely for however long they were, it wouldn't have just been the actual balcony, but the living room as well. Even the 30-year-old scotch is tainted. Joe is just alone in his thoughts and all those memories. His home, his sanctuary would have been a constant reminder and a source of torment. I think there's a bunch of reasons this works really perfectly with, bringing that into this episode. First of all, Joe probably spent a lot of time with Gordon harping on the situation with Ryan post Ryan's death. Makes sense. And at a certain point, Gordon could not hear any more of it. And so he ended up distancing himself from Joe. And we find that out going into 310. And I think here, Joe's been harping about Cameron for years, and Gordon has just stayed with it and patient with it and trying to get Joe to turn a corner with it. But it probably feels a lot like it did then for Gordon. But I also think this idea of like the 30-year-old scotch is tainted. I think, Joe making a comment like you wanted to celebrate with the Blue Man Group. It's like, we don't celebrate things anymore. We don't do that because that leads to death. Like I feel like he's got like a connection there between stopping and smelling the roses and how Ryan died. Because that was like the last time he saw Ryan happy. So I don't know. It's a really interesting, like, how many more times are you going to read that? Yeah. I also just love the commentary about, Joe and Ryan here, and I didn't get a chance to bring that in before because I knew I kind of wanted to save it for this episode. So thank you for that, Amelia. For 309, Amelia says, when Joe goes back to his apartment and looks up, I take it as yes, he really wants to connect with Cam, but it's not the same energy. It reads more as resignation. Like he's asking myself, do I do this all and all that it entails again? This is the thing he has to do to get him back to the thing, for example, Cam. He knows there will be a cost and not just arbitrary job losses from a bullpen he didn't care about like in season 1. But he really feels these costs personally right now. I think that's where that feeling of like addiction is coming into play for me, Amelia. This feeling of like, am I going to do this again? I think I am. It's like, okay, I've already started down this path. Here it is again. Amelia says from 309, I'm very mixed about Donna with everything that happened with Cam and Mutiny and Gordon this season. It goes without saying how amazing Carrie Bechet plays her as she transitioned from being a mom who works to a businesswoman extraordinaire. Yeah, I think that's what's amazing about these characters. I mean, they go through it. They have their highs, they have their lows. When they have their lows, it doesn't look pretty. They take it out on other characters. It's not good. It's why these relationships are so complex. And I don't blame you for not being on board with Donna after 308. Like a lot of people do bad things in that episode, really. But I think, 309, we're meant to get a little more sympathy, I think, for Donna in terms of how they're showing her. So it's tricky. How do you kind of move past that? I feel like I'm moving past that in this episode with Cam, because I was like, Cam, what are you doing in 310? And it's still a bit of a mess for Cam right now, but I feel more sympathy for her because I think things have shifted in the years since 310. All right, now some feedback about 310. Amelia says, I first binge watched the show in May 2020, and I was fully on board with Joe and Cam getting back together and casting Tom as the bad guy. Well, the person standing in the way of that. I didn't question how healthy any new relationship Joe and Cam might be for either of them. I was still coming down on the euphoria or electricity of their reconnection in 309. However, on subsequent watches, I'm more sympathetic with Tom as well as being sympathetic with Joe. I'm on board with your hot take about Cam as the one they're pivoting around and pandering to. Cam seems the most lost and destructive. She is a mess. I don't think she has resolved anything with Donna over losing Mutiny. Her depression from Halloween in 308 has turned to anger, and it's still as fresh as ever 4 years later, as we see in 309. I think about Mutiny every day, and it makes me furious. Just the month before, at the end of 1986, she basically ran away to Japan, and then she was just with Tom. And there were already red flags that the relationship wasn't ideal. He was more traditional, wanting to carry her over the threshold, his joke about her wearing an apron. And we know Cam had never been like that. Then the added pressure of Tom wanting children and Cam not is going to be huge for their relationship. I'm sure that that traditionalist Tom thinks that the natural progression from getting married, that's the natural progression from getting married. Yeah. Look, so first of all, if you're worried that I'm only going to read feedback from people who agree with me about 310, don't you worry, because Frack and Toaster Lover is here to present altering, like other viewpoints. And I'm going to save that for a little bit. But to Amelia's point here, I think, look, I mean, we're certainly seeing, and this is very results oriented from 401, looking at 310. But Kim's kind of stringing everybody along there, like she is not. She's going to go back to Japan and try to make things work with Tom, or continue to be living there with Tom. And so that can't be a good thing for Cam and Joe. They had this reconnection in 309. It feels like that's the start of something, but it's a fling. And it inspired all this hope in Joe. And she's not prepared to pay that off, which we're finding out in this episode. Now, even then, they gave us a scene at the end, towards the end of 310, where she's in the car with Tom, and Tom's like, okay, this is good. Like, well, I'll go home first, and then you'll come and join me. She's like, yep, I'm going to get on the plane. And it's just hard to see that. And we're seeing the effects of all that in this episode. But yeah, look, she was a real mess in 310, but now we're in 401, and I think there was a real anger in her, like a seething under the surface anger in 309 and 310. And I think now I feel that something there has broken and it's shifted, and it's like there's an acceptance, there's a sadness, I don't know about her feelings towards Donna necessarily, but I think she just seems just very altered in how she is here from where she was in the last episode. Okay, Amelia asks about 310. Genuine question. What exactly is Joe's beef with Donna? Is it solely defending Cam because of Donna's part in ousting her from Mutiny, or is it something else? Donna also has a gripe with Joe. Is that about Joe taking Gordon's code and turning it into Macmillan utility, or is it that they recognize a little of each other's ruthless business selves in each other? Okay, again, I had the interview that I did with Carrie Bechet, she does weigh in on this a little bit. I framed the question differently, but I think her thought is that these two, Donna and Joe, see maybe a little bit of each other, of themselves and each other, and maybe that's what causes them to clash. So I think that's just as good an argument as anything here. Um, these two have never been close, Joe and Donna. I mean, they've always sort of held each other at arm's length. Donna has always been one to like, there was a moment in season 2 where she's like, actually, maybe this deal with West Group isn't so bad. She was also one to say, maybe Joe wasn't behind this WestNet thing, like he says. But most of the time, Donna's been the one that's like, yeah, he's got delusions of grandeur. Yeah, he just tried to tank the project in season 1. He's the one who he was pretend he pretended to destroy Cameron's work. Like she's been the one who's been saying, "Don't you see what Joe is doing?" So many times. And Joe has, especially in the beginning, was like, "Ooh, Donna's on to me," and so he was trying to keep her at bay, keep her at quite a distance. So like, I think those two have a history of just sort of being like, they're not close, never have been. So I don't know that I think it's not that they have beef necessarily. I just think they've never trusted each other fully. And so why would we expect them to now? More on that when we get to Frack and Toaster Love's comments. Amelia also says about last episode, 310, I was thinking also about before the tussle and Tom not using Ryan. Remember, I was like, okay, that is like below the belt all the way for everybody in the room, with Tom being like, yeah, remember Ryan, and him constantly using Ryan's name. So Amelia says, at that point, Tom had very strong suspicions that something happened between Cam and Joe, but nothing concrete. If he'd said something about it, he does alert Donna and Gordon to the other personal stuff and perhaps getting them on his side, but is that enough? What is the cost? I'm sure even as he was getting worked up, he would have played through the consequences of what he would say. He could go various ways. I don't want you near my wife. And he comes off as controlling, and Joe has more power. His marriage is in jeopardy. That wouldn't work, and he'd piss Cam off. Or he could go, I don't want you to sleep with my wife again. He runs the risk of angering Cam more. She denies it more. I think his only move in not putting any extra pressure on his marriage is to say he's concerned for Cam's well-being and that Joe is dangerous. Yes, it's a risk mentioning Ryan, but he knows everyone else has been burnt by Joe at some point. So he's reminding the room that Joe is not someone to go into partnership with. And that also means Cam is away from him in the process. Okay. I mean, well, I was wondering, is there another path to go down? It looks like Amelia is starting to unpack that and explore, like, well, if we tried this another way, does that work out better for Tom? And it looks like Amelia is thinking it does not. So I'd love to get people's feedback on this. Okay, let's hear from @CamHousegF. We're going to do a comment here that sort of encapsulates a lot of things. This episode is and this one was related to 310. This episode is so rich in fun character dynamics. The constant taunting between Tom and Joe, Cam's apathetic attitude towards Donna, Gordon providing the comedic relief, and Donna trying to keep the meeting afloat. Poor Donna. Everyone's so heated. I love how the conversation between Tom and Joe about HTTP and FTP can be understandable, even if you don't have much tech knowledge. We know Joe comes out on top on this dispute for Cam's interest just by looking at the actor's body language and tone of voice. Pause. Whole bunch of good feedback about HTTP and FTP. Good research from CamHousegF in the comments. So check the comments at 310 if you want more technical details on that. Cam's apathy kills me. She's my favorite character, and I defended her resentment towards Donna and Nim. However, her attitude in this episode was a mess. Donna lost everyone after what happened to Mutiny. She regrets everything that happened between her and Cam, and she's genuinely trying to fix things. Why did Cam fly all the way from Tokyo just to act like that? What upsets me the most is that Donna planned the meeting around Cam and Tom's travel plans, and Cam is displaying a disengaged and sharp attitude the whole time. She can be so cold sometimes. I felt so bad for Donna when Cam told her she can't work with her. She really tried to fix things up. The way Cam sidelined her from her own project at the end was cruel. Because of this lack of communication between Cam and the other characters, I imagine she must have been bottling up some of her feelings, therefore resulting in this sharp attitude. She hasn't been able to move on. I'm a big fan of Donna in this episode. Her last scene in the episode is pure gold. Love how she fixes her hair and wipes away her tears before making the call. This is the moment that cold and bitter Donna takes over. Carrie Bechet, what an actress. I mean, look, again, I know Frack and Toaster Love was like, come on, I'm going to get to your feedback real soon. Because I look, even at the beginning of 310, that podcast is like, I think I have a take that everybody's going to disagree with. I think Kim's awful in this episode. And more people ended up agreeing with my takes than I ever anticipated. But there are counterpoints, absolutely, which we will get to. But Kim Howe's GF, you know, the word apathy is a really interesting one. When I was looking for images, I had a hard time finding images from the last episode to put into the Instagram posts and the YouTube cover, because when I strip out the backgrounds, it requires it to be obvious to the program how to strip out the background. And those episodes, those scenes are so dark that like every time I'd strip out a background, I'd like miss entire pieces of humans or entire humans from the scene. But in the process of doing that, I got really close to the imagery. And that, like, especially in that first meeting, Cam is so like everybody's around the table and Cam is up against a support beam standing in the back, looking down, not able to look at Joe. And I think a lot of that makes me feel like that's a really removed body language to have. Now, everybody in that room might have interpreted it differently, right? Like Joe knows why she's keeping her distance. Tom has a suspicion why she's keeping her distance. For Donna in that room, that would look like, why are you even going to be here if you're going to be so disengaged and hanging back in this room? And some of the things she says as well are very like, look, I'm just here to check it out. Like, hey, I mean, even for her to say, I'm here for lots of reasons. Hey, remember, I've got a lot going on stateside, including like visiting. Like, she starts listing all the great reasons why she's taken this trip that aren't being in that room that Donna has, coordinated. So I think like there is apathy, I think is a good word. I think some of it we read differently as an audience because we know of the many different things that are happening for Cam in that room. But Donna only has the information she has, right? So I think it's tricky. Does Donna deserve forgiveness? I mean, she's done some hardcore things in season 3. Kim doesn't need to forgive her, but if she's there, what are we doing? So, yeah. But yeah, I mean, Carrie Bechet, killing it. Okay, Frack and Toaster Lover. I know. Here's what I want to say. So I have my friend Fish, who I've done the Felicity Rewatch podcast with, and who like Fish and I, we love the same. We always are like recommending shows and movies to each other, especially shows, and we'll recommend the same stuff and be like, oh, this is so good. And then we'll start talking about why we think it's so good. And we everything I like, she hates, everything she likes, I hate. And the way we feel about specific characters is often exactly the opposite. And it makes it really fun. And it made it really fun to do a podcast with her. And Frack and Toaster Lover, it's not exactly the same because I don't think that there's stuff that you hate that I love, and like the reverse. Like I think we enjoy everything, but I am very much enjoying that we very often look at the same exact scene, we take the same exact information in, and we spit out completely different reactions to it. It's so cool. So Frack and Toaster Lover was fired up at the end of my last podcast, and rightfully so. So this is gonna be fun. But first, let's start with some feedback on 309. that I did not notice that I wanted to pull this in. We even get the same lines repeated. Cameron angrily asks Donna, "Why are you here?" and gets the reply, "I came to see you." And later she asks Joe on the roof, "Why are you here?" and eventually gets the reply, "I came to see you." But the context and meaning couldn't be more different, and the same goes for her responses. There's also the line, "You know why," from Donna to Joe and later Joe to Cam. Both times it has so much history and unspoken meaning behind it. Donna replying, "You know why," was particularly interesting. Of course, it was a reference to the mutiny vote as an answer to, "Why don't you talk to her yourself?" But it was also an answer to the question why she was asking Joe to be the mediator, which implies that Donna knew that Cam had an ongoing weakness for Joe and that he was someone she would be happy to see, in spite of the fact that Cam and Joe's relationship had been very strained, to put it mildly, and that Cam was now married to someone else. Holy cow, I didn't even pick that up. I mean, gosh. You do a deep dive and you miss cool stuff like this. Thank you, Frank and Toaster Lover. Didn't even notice those repeated lines. Also on that episode, I don't think the project is just something Joe sees as a way to get back with Cam again. He's exactly the person who can appreciate what World Wide Web means. And it's exactly what he's been looking for all those years, and a follow-up to what he was working on with Ryan. It's probably the first time in 4 years he's seen an idea to be excited about, but he wouldn't trust himself to be the person working on it if Cam hadn't built his confidence up again in that episode about who he is and how important it is what he does. Okay, fair enough. So it's not just about, like, he reads the facts, he looks up. It's not just about, am I going into this with Cam again? The addiction thing I was just mentioning. But to Frack and Toaster Lava, it's like, it's a really good idea. And so maybe the idea is at the core for him. All right. 310. Ding, 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 round one. I have major disagreements with many of the things you said about Tom and about Cam and Donna. Firstly, maybe this is the time to reveal that this is when Cam and Tom became one of my least favorite relationships on TV ever. Oh, yeah. I think it's a terrible relationship that's not just making them both miserable, it's making them both into worse people that are hard to like. Tom himself said the situation is making him into the kind of person he doesn't like to be. And I think the same goes for Cameron. They should be honest with each other and end the marriage as soon as possible. Let's see. Let's pause there for a second. Yeah, in season 2, I was so glad Tom came in because I felt the Joe and Cam dynamic in season 1 was just so unhealthy. And it was always like he was like always doing, like, tricking Cam or lying to Cam, and like sometimes Cam was attracted to that. I was like, oh, like, stop it. So Tom came in and I felt like that was the way healthier choice for Cam. Was Cam a healthy choice for Tom? I don't know. I feel like he was often coming in and having to save the day. He was saving her from panic attacks. He was like if was that a codependent relationship? Maybe, like, maybe. But I think in comparison to Joe and Cam, I felt like the Tom and Cam dynamic was one I was very happy to see in season 2. I think that in season 3, we see them together again. We see they get married. There are some real red flags there. 310. I mean, to everybody listening, have you ever been in a relationship where after a period of it being good, it went sideways and maybe was not recoverable, and you just turned into a version of yourself you didn't love in whatever way? I think that can look like a lot of different things. I think that's the point that they're at in 310. Is a relationship salvageable at that point? I think probably. In personal experience, I have not seen people salvage it. But if you go to therapy, like if you get open and honest with each other, maybe you can get there. But I mean, we see Tom begging her to be open and honest at one point, and she still lies to him. So I don't know. Like, this is not a relationship where both of them are prepared to go or interested to go to therapy at that stage when we leave them at 310. Like, I don't see that outcome right away. So I think, yeah, like, they're both terrible versions of themselves at this point in this relationship, and it's going to be self-reinforcing because that's, you start to build, protect yourself by doing those things that aren't great. It's not ideal. Was this always the worst relationship? No, for a good long time, I was really happy this relationship was there. But you see him in 310, and it's like, ouch. And we know exactly how they got there and all the reasons why, right? So yeah, really good point. Frack and Toaster Lover continues. Now, about your defense of Tom, do I think he's the bad guy we should hate? No. Can I understand why he's acting like this? Yes. Does that mean I think he has the right to act like that? No. And it also doesn't stop me from finding his behavior obnoxious. Of course, he has very good reasons and is completely right to be jealous of Joe and suspicious of Cam and him. But that's something he should have taken up with his wife from the start. And he shouldn't be projecting that on a very promising project that Cam was invited to work on in the first place, not him. Tom doesn't have the right to expect Cameron to support him when he's shutting down ideas Joe is presenting. Just because she's his wife doesn't mean she isn't allowed to have her own opinion about the project and must instead agree with him or allow him to tank the project she might be interested in working on. And that could be the biggest thing she does in her career. I didn't start thinking Tom was acting like a controlling jerk because Joe pointed it out. Joe just put into words what I was feeling. He was also spying on Cameron by reading her emails. He also shouldn't have said, let's go, Cameron, and assumed Cameron would automatically take his side in the matter of him trying to stop her from working on the project. The way he kept going at Joe, especially when he said, I don't want Cameron to end up like Ryan, aside from being awful in general and to Joe and Ryan's memory, was also incredibly infantilizing to Cameron, as if she isn't responsible for her own actions but needs to be saved from evil Joe. I'm going to pause there for a second. Yeah. Okay. So Tom has suspicions about Joe and Cam. I think he had suspicions about Cam and what happened at Comdex in the month between when Cam got back to Japan and now. So I think there's a reason he's in this room right now, because he feels like he needs to be there to observe this. He doesn't trust Cam. He doesn't trust the situation. And I guess you could handle that in a variety of ways. If Tom had indeed outright asked or talked to Cam about it, I think she would lie to him exactly the way she does in this episode. Even after all the direct moments he's seen that indicate that something has happened here, she still bold-faced lies to him when he asks directly about what happened at Comdex. So could he have taken this up with Cam in Japan? I don't think the outcome would have been any different at all. So here they are in this room. I think Cam obviously has a right to her own opinions about the project. Tom, I think, is grasping at every straw he can, looking for some way for Cam to show her support of him. I don't think that's unfair. I think that there are also ways to disagree with Tom in the room that show respect and deference to Tom while disagreeing and presenting alternate ideas of the project. She doesn't do any of those things. She doesn't give Tom any courtesy or any respect in that room, except the first meeting that they leave when Tom's like, it's time to go, and she gets up and she goes with him. That's it. That's basically the only time that she does anything to back him up. And he's right about what he's suspicious about. So it's not, he's being controlling because he's trying, and it's not good. Being controlling is not good. The reason he's being controlling is he's trying to save his marriage, and he doesn't know how else to do it. And this is not a healthy way to do it. And it comes off as asshole behavior. But he's trying to save his marriage, and Cam is not in this space from what we're seeing from her. I don't know if I wish this. It might have helped me to see the conversation that Cam and Tom had before the last meeting that she goes into in that office. The one where, we see Tom and Cam in the car. They're like, I'm glad we had that talk last night. Okay, so I'm going to go to my meetings today, and then I'm going to get on a plane and go to Japan. And then you're going to, she's like, and then I'll go to Japan. And so they've had a conversation. They worked some things through. She didn't tell him the truth. He says, we won't lie to each other anymore. They say, I love you. It might have helped me to see that conversation. I'm not sure that would have been a thing. Like, from a writing standpoint, I don't think you should include that scene. But I think if you did include that scene, maybe I'd feel a little differently about Cam here. But Tom does not want to be behaving like this. He also acknowledges that he's doing things that are not okay. And I think all these different examples that Frack and Toaster Lover is citing is like, this is not okay, and this is not okay, and this is not okay. We all get that. He gets that too. But he's trying to save his marriage, and he's looking for Cam at any point to say, Tom presents a good idea here, or setting a boundary with Joe, like in a blatant way. Like, she is letting Tom and Joe duke this out in front of her, like fighting for her honor, when Tom is married to her. Like, he should hope that she's going to honor her marriage with Tom. Like, I don't know. I think what Tom's expecting here is sort of bare minimum of the relationship. Like, and because he's not getting it, he's like clinging more, which is ugly and gross. But it's because he's not getting anything from Cam. Okay. So yeah, and the Ryan stuff. Yeah, I get it. Yep. Okay. The way you described Joe hypnotizing Cam, Gordon, and Donna with his speech sounds like how Tom probably sees the situation, as opposed to them realizing that the ideas Joe's presenting are actually excellent. And it took a while to convince Gordon and Cam. Yes, he is desperate to hold on to Cameron, but if the only way to save your marriage is to stop your wife from being anywhere near your ex, including interfering with her career, because you aren't sure she won't choose to sleep with him every time, or that she might love him more than you, then that marriage is really not worth saving. Pause. Maybe not, right? But we don't just, I think the thing about it is there's often a period of time between when you know something's going south and when it ends. And sometimes that is a very protracted period of time. In this case, as far as we know, it's been a month. And I would say, in the grand scheme of real life situations, that is a relatively short amount of time. And that's assuming that things weren't like really horribly like tension filled before, which they might have been, which might be why she cheated on Tom to begin with at Comdex. But, I think this idea that the only way to save this thing is to say, you can't see this X anymore. I know people in real life who've done that, and they have healthy relationships or continued relationships now, and that person is in the rearview mirror. So I think Tom is trying to find a way to make this workable. And I think, is this relationship worth saving? I don't know, right? But I think, were they going to go from we're having a problem to we're ending this thing in 1 month? That would be such a fast timeline, right? And they've been together 4 years. They live in another country together. They've invested a lot into each other. So there's that. Is the outcome, I mean, look, we find out in this episode, Tom left her, right? So I think, was that the right outcome? If they weren't prepared to really work on this, get some serious therapy or have some really honest conversations, then yeah, I think that's where you go with it. You end it. But I guess they needed a little bit more time to come to that conclusion that this thing was not salvageable and that they wanted to end it forever. Okay. But Cameron also ends up looking very bad in this episode. And what particularly upsets me watching this episode is that she's almost unrecognizable from the person we knew in season 1 or season 2 or even season 3 up to this point. Even in 309, when she was with Joe or with the random fans at the signing or the Atari party, she was different, but still recognizable as Cam. But seeing her around Tom, who is this woman? Even the way she's dressed and styled and the way she looks and talks, it all feels wrong. And that's not just because she's messy, she's always been messy. It's not because she can lie. We knew that. It's because so much about her feels cowardly, fake, and conventional. Lying about her affair, those interactions with her husband that feel so fake, the way she's too afraid to make a decision about her personal life. Season one Cam would be so embarrassed of her. At the same time, I do like that she now has more self-awareness, admits that there are shades of gray, that it's not always the same people who are the bad guy in the situation. And she's done a lot of bad herself, and that she's not the righteous one, which is something Donna is still unable to do. When Cameron said she's all grown up, to me, that sounded like she kind of looked down on her former self as immature and a little ridiculous. Her reaction to seeing a woman dressed as season one Cameron as the protagonist of Spacebike Chronicles in 309. And when Boz said, "You were grown up before I even met you," I felt like he was retorting that her old, rebellious, uncompromising, no BS attitude was not immature. But maybe that's just me and I'm projecting how I feel. She could do well to get back some of that old attitude. She's changed a lot for sure. One thing that your comment made me think about is like the lying. When did that actually start for her? Because I feel like when she boldface lies to Tom, that feels like something that the very early, like season one, episode one Cam, I don't feel like that Cam lied like that. Or did she? When did this start? When can we trace this back to? For sure, Frack and Toaster Love and I both were really inspecting the scene in season two where she sort of honey traps Joe and fully honey traps Joe into he's sort of the Trojan horse that brings the Sonaris virus to Westnet, but she kisses him. And Frack and Toaster was like, that kiss was over the top. That was too much. That was really risky. And for me, that's like another example of she could and would go to that level of deception with Joe. Were there earlier instances? 10 Broad 36, she and the whole mutiny team go to elaborate lengths to hoodwink Joe. Were we seeing this stuff before from her? Because I felt like it was so jarring to see her lie to Tom. Should it have been? I'm really considering this. After Frack and Toaster Lover said, we know she can lie. Maybe we do. I don't know. Inviting other people's thoughts on this for sure. But yeah, was Cam always mature? The Boz line, I feel like Boz saying you were grown up even before I met you, I feel like there's something there more about how she's had to take care of herself, like the upbringing that she had, the fact that her father died when she was so young. I think he sees a lot of that in her. I don't know if it was necessarily a reflection on her personality itself, as much as like the coping mechanisms she had developed. But yeah, I don't know that we've ever seen Cam as somebody who's just like being a kid. So there's that. Okay, continuation here. No, I don't think Cameron came with an elaborate plan to get her revenge on Donna and take over the project. She didn't even seem to know if she wanted to do the project at all, and it took her a lot of convincing from Joe to start believing in it. It's also not like she was pretending to be on board with Donna when she came or ready to forgive her and make up. She almost didn't come back the second day, and it took some convincing from Joe and her talk with Boz to change her mind. I also don't really see this Cameron as a master schemer. Her main problem is that she's unsure what she wants and can't make the major decisions about her personal life, instead of just going with the flow. I feel like Cameron is kind of the POV character in this episode, which follows up on the theme of safety. Joe is here in full glory as the passionate visionary Cameron fell in love with, but question if that's who he really was, presenting the hope for a better, more exciting future where people could connect in new ways. Tom is advocating status quo and shutting down these ideas, and Cam is suddenly confronted with how conventional Tom is in every way when she learns he's completely changed his view on open source now that he's successful. These roles match the roles they have in Cam's life. Her marriage to Tom feels safe, while her feelings for Joe and the intensity of their relationship feel dangerous. Just like getting into the whole project with these people from her past, both because of Joe and because of Donna, and maybe the others too. Cameron is an intense emotional person. She probably has an anxiety disorder and she has been hurt in the past. So she ran away to Japan so she wouldn't have to deal with any of them, just as much as she agreed to move because of Tom's job. But there's also something very subdued and muted about her when we see her with Tom, as opposed to how full of life she was when we saw her with Joe at Comdex. Like you pointed out, so many moments and lines from this episode have a double meaning, and I think they really refer both to work and to personal relationships, to the project and to the Joe and Cam relationship. We have to see if there's something there. No, Joe, it's a mess. This future can be better. I can't let this one get away. It's pretty telling also that when we see Cameron tell Tom, I love you back in this episode, is in the scene where she is pretending that nothing is wrong with them, right after Tom says, I don't want us to lie to each other, soon after she's blatantly lied to him. And as soon as they exchange I love yous and act like everything is okay, we see Joe pull up behind Tom as if his presence is immediately there to put a lie to it. First of all, the comparisons between personal relationship and the business projects absolutely continue in this episode 401, which is, I think, a cool continuation of that trend that we were seeing. Did Cam plan this as an elaborate scheme for revenge on Donna from the beginning? And I am totally with you on your points on this, Rack and Toaster Lover, because I'm on the fence with it too. The place where I'm getting stuck with it, and sometimes this happens for me, where like one thing will happen where I'm like, oh, but we have that. And for me in season 2, it was Joe playing the tank battle game with, the tank battle game with Cam anonymously after he had just proposed to Sarah. I got really fixated in that, and it really changed how I looked at a lot of the scenes in season 2. And for me, what changes it in this episode is Cam saying to Donna that she specifically asked to meet at the old mutiny offices because she didn't want to forget what Donna had done to her. And I'm having a hard time seeing that in any other way than she knew she didn't want to partner with Donna coming all the way from Japan to here. And I feel like Frack and Toaster Lover, you're presenting some good takes, and I'm just having a hard time getting unstuck past that point. Because if she did that, she's saying, I cannot trust this woman, and I don't want to forget that. Why would you go into business with that person? And so she builds this whole trip in the States, and she's in this room and she's hanging back and she's telling Donna, I have lots of things to do here. It's not just you. Like it's hard for me to put that part away. And I don't think she's a person who would scheme this elaborately, but then we've seen her do that honey trap, and I don't know. I'm really on the fence about that. I mean, I guess the result of it is the same either way. The outcome of it all is the same. It's just, how do I look at Cam in that situation? Okay. Frack and Toaster Lover says, and now the part where I disagree with you the most. Yes. On Donna and Cameron. I don't believe Cameron wanted to take Donna off the project when she first came. She didn't even know she would want to work on the project. I think she wanted to see Joe, and she kind of also wanted to see Donna and hear what she has to say. And part of her wanted to forgive her, as we saw in 309 when she came to talk to Donna and pointed out that Donna hadn't even called her, which means Cam was hoping for a call and an apology. So she decided it had to be in the mutiny building so she wouldn't be overcome with nostalgia and make a rash decision. I probably should have said my point after this. And for a moment, Cameron was on board, but Donna blew it. And I also think Cameron was right to remove Donna from the project. Is it cruel for Cameron to get a revenge for what Donna did to her 4 years ago, basically forcing her out of the company Cameron founded and invited Donna in? Maybe, but it's also kind of poetic justice, since Donna was just casually suggesting removing Joe from the project. First, she was using Joe to get to Cameron, using their personal relationship and feelings for each other. And then she suggests to remove Joe, who did most of the work for that project and convinced Cam and Gordon to join. But because she just felt it would be inconvenient for Cam to have him around because she had slept with him and her husband was there, which is a gross suggestion. What kind of person does that? And what kind of person does she think Cam is to do that? I would be so insulted if I was Cameron. Like Cameron pointed out, it showed that Donna hadn't changed and was just as ruthless as 4 years earlier. Why would Cameron trust her? I also find it annoying whenever Donna started to make jabs about Joe and Gordon. She really likes to keep up this idea of Joe as the designated bad guy and likes to think of herself as righteous, as if nothing has changed since they first met in 1983. even when she was the one acting like season one Joe. Maybe on some level, she was always jealous and felt this kind of ruthlessness was what was needed to succeed and wanted to emulate it without even admitting it to herself. Maybe she always had it in her, but was afraid to let it loose because she didn't want to be a bad person. So she kept projecting that hate onto Joe. It was interesting how Donna kept telling Gordon she was not sure about Joe with the tone that said, he is the bad guy. I don't trust him and don't like him. While Gordon was saying he understood, but he actually was talking about how Joe was difficult to be around because of his depression the last time he saw him. I'm going to pause there, although there was a continued thought there. I have a bunch of thoughts on this. First of all, I shared my thought about the use of the office space as an indication of what Cam was trying to do there. Donna and Joe. Donna and Joe are not friends. They've never been friends. I think Donna's only thing that she wanted here was to work with Cameron. If the reason Donna was bringing this project to Cameron was that she wanted to reconcile with Cameron. I even maybe think that it would have been okay with Donna just to reconcile personally and not work on a project together, but she felt she needed a peace offering. And so she was bringing that to Cameron. This was not about working with any other people. There are now 3 additional people in the room who have nothing to do with her objective, which is to reconcile with Cam, I think. So, or at least that was her initial objective. And of those people, she doesn't really want to work with Joe. She's never trusted Joe all the way back to season 1. She was arguably the first person not to trust Joe. Boz might be the first. Boz is the first person. Donna was the second person not to trust Joe and vocalized that. So she's not invested in working with Joe, never has been. Joe's never worked with Donna really directly, aside from like the first Comdex episode. So those two are not close. Donna and Joe have never shown loyalty to each other. So I don't know why we feel like they have to now for her to prove herself to Cam. But I think with Donna, why would she think that Joe is different? Why would she think that Joe is now somebody she can trust? The last she knew from Joe in season 3, Joe, from her perspective, might have stolen their best coder, Ryan, and ultimately sent Ryan into such a state, that project, that Ryan committed suicide. So like, what is in that would make Donna think that Joe has changed? That's obviously looking at it with a huge lack of information. But there, and she doesn't, it's been 4 years even since that. And so she doesn't even know what he's been up to recently. They're not close. So I think this idea that like Donna not wanting Joe on the project or saying it was okay to let Joe go by itself doesn't really alarm me. That is par for the course. And I think when you look at it, if Donna wants to work with Cameron, Joe has now gotten onto this project. Joe invited Gordon. Tom invited himself. So like, none of these people are really part of the ultimate mission of Donna reconnecting with Cam. If anything, they're making it more complicated, especially with this nonsense that's happening between Joe and Tom and Cam. And I'm still very much undecided about exactly what Donna has labeled this as in this room. Does she know that Cam actually had an affair with Joe? Does she? Maybe she might. You could suspect. Now, here's the thing. Is it insulting to suggest that you can remove Joe from the project? I think it's more insulting to tell Cam she should remove her husband from the project, because I would think that's where the loyalty would be. I think if you're saying, I want this thing to work for you, I want to take away the obstacles for you to say yes to working with me, I want to reconcile with you, Cam. Here's the things that we can do to make this possible. Here's what I'm willing to do. Like, she can't recommend getting rid of Tom because that should probably insult Cam. She's not going to recommend getting rid of Cam because Cam's the point of this project for her. Getting rid of Gordon wouldn't really have any impact because why? Joe's a way that you could take away the conflict, the weird triangle of tense disgustingness that's happening between Cam, Joe, and Tom, you could, if you got rid of Joe, that would help quell that. And Donna's totally okay with doing that. So she says that to Cam. I don't think that should be insulting necessarily. I think if Cam has feelings for Joe, then that's going to make Cam feel a certain type of way for sure. But Cam's married. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, what do you do there? So yeah, I mean, those are some thoughts. I think like, look, is Donna like the best version of herself? None of these people are the best version of themselves. I mean, maybe Gordon. But I think I can see Donna's perspective here. I think the Donna Joe stuff doesn't. Why would Donna want to work with Joe, really? And why would Joe want to work with Donna, for that matter? Okay, Frack and Toaster Lover says, in any other circumstances, I think it. Okay, this is a continuation of the last thought where we left off with. Maybe I'll start with that last point. Gordon was saying he understood, but he was actually talking about how Joe was difficult to be around because of his depression the last time he saw him. In any other circumstances, I think it'd be awful to abandon a friend because they are depressed. But I can understand that in Gordon's case, since he knows he could die at almost any moment and is trying to live his life to the fullest and see the positive side of it. So thinking about death and depression would be too much for him. Yeah, I mean, look, I think yeah, I mean, there is the specific, like Gordon has an illness and he's thinking a lot about what his world looks like. And yeah, I think that is a factor here. Look, I think it feels like the morally right thing, and it feels like the good thing to say that you're going to be there for people when they're unwell, that you're going to be there for your friend when they're depressed. We also know that Joe can spend years in a period of depression. And I think for anybody, you got to put your air mask on first before you take care of other people, right? Like if you don't have the bandwidth or the tools to absorb somebody else's depression, to be their caretaker, it just serves to make you unwell to be around them. And so as much as it's nice to say stick it out because they need you, you also need to be okay yourself. And so you like if you get to a point with anybody where it's like this is like I'm not doing well because of this connection, like you have to find a way to set your boundary or your limit. But Gordon did that. So I respect that choice. I can't not respect that choice. We want to think that he'd stick it out and be there with Joe. But if you don't have the bandwidth for that, you don't have the bandwidth for that. I don't know. I think I don't want people to think that they can't make choices to protect their own sanity. So I struggle with that piece, right? Okay. I'm putting this piece last. It seems like a small detail because I have a comment from Evan the Stray that directly addresses this next. So interesting that we look at the same details and we think opposite, right? So Frack and Toaster Lover addresses a question that I asked. A blinking battery in Tom's laptop, sorry. A blinking battery probably means it's not fully charged and there's danger of it emptying fully, but it's certainly not dead, which is why Cam had that look on her face. Tom was lying about the battery. Let's, instead of me addressing that, let me go to Evan the Stray, because I don't know. I still don't know. I'm looking to all of you for answers. So Evan the Stray did some research on this. From what I was able to find online, the laptop in question is a Toshiba T1000 SE. In the repair manual diagnostics, the DC in would show flashing red if there was a problem with the power supply. So Toshiba would have likely maintained the flashing red as a problem status. Also, there was an operating powered on photo showing a green light battery status. There was another tech forum stating the flashing red should indicate insufficient charge to power on. I interpret Cam's initial head movement side to side, followed by a forward nod with a frown, as it wasn't what I was thinking. He told the truth, which takes me back to the battery becoming drained, and Tom was simply opportunistic about using hers. I mean, this is the kind of research we do around here for the art. And those are opposite conclusions. So I don't know. Viewer's choice? What do you do? Darn it. Okay. Let me go back a second to a comment from Evan the Stray from 305. My inclination of why Cam didn't contact Mutiny or Donna was to function as an assertion of power, especially since she had been expressing how pressured she feels. I'm thinking she would be like, oh, yeah, watch this. I don't answer you. I come back when I want to come back. Okay, why am I bringing this up, you ask? From Yerba Buena, 305. So in 305, there was this whole discussion through the feedback of why does Cam leave and not even tell anybody from Mutiny, like, hey, I'll be back in a few more. I need a few more days. Like, she could have saved a lot of problems by contacting anybody from Mutiny and saying, I need a few more days, but she didn't. And so my thought was like, what's up with Cam when she disappears? Like, we've seen her isolate to solve problems. We've seen her isolate in Yerba Buena. Why am I bringing that up again here? Well, you know, Cam has these extended moments of isolation, and we're seeing how isolated she's been here in 401. I don't know how long it's been that Tom left her. She seems to have set herself up somewhere. She came back to California. She's reintegrating to the degree that she can, but she's not sharing information about Tom leaving her with Joe. She's keeping things to herself. She's been kind of hanging out in the background. And frankly, she spent years not really communicating with Gordon and Joe about a project she was working with them on in a very similar way to what we saw her doing in Yerba Buena. So it makes me reinspect this part of Cam that just goes dark. She just disappears and doesn't get in touch with people. It seems like you could just say, I need a minute, and here's exactly how long I think I need, even if you don't tell people why. I'm going through some stuff. I need some time. It doesn't seem hard to say that, but she can't seem to do that. And so, like, why? And in this episode, it's feeling like a real coping mechanism. It's feeling like she really needs to seek answers from within herself, and like getting any external input whatsoever breaks the system. I don't know. Like, it's just so interesting that we've seen these examples. We've also seen her we've seen her go to the roof when she has a panic attack in more than one episode, sort of panic attack in one of the episodes. We've seen her, like, go to private spaces to take care of herself. So this is her doing it for a really extended period of time. And yeah, I don't know. I think it's an interesting tendency that she has, and I continue to wonder where this is coming from for her. All right. Also, let's go back to 310 and the season opener. Okay, I asked a question about like when we open that finale episode from the last season, we're looking through something on the ceiling. I was like, what the hell is that thing? Evan called it a mirror ball. And now backs it up because I was like, really? He's like, yeah. So here's Evan's thoughts. In the season opener, 31 minutes, 21 seconds, the mirror ball is in the same spot in the rafters where it is in the finale. It can be seen clearest, but for the shortest period of time at 36 minutes, 5 seconds, right when Tom tackles Joe, longer beforehand. Interestingly, I'm wondering if there's some purposeful symbolism with it being included in frame with Joe when he's speaking at the whiteboard at 35 minutes and 15 seconds. Also, it's over Tom's head between that time and when Tom tackles Joe, like it's over Tom's head, shortly following Tom saying, I don't see it. Maybe the it is the World Wide Web, symbolically represented by the mirror ball or globe. Dang, Evan. I've told you I'm not always great at noticing the visual details of what I'm pretty good, I think, at noticing camera work and camera angles, but like set decoration and what people are wearing, not my strength. And so apparently this mirror ball has been all over the place. I've missed it every time. Thank you, Evan. I will never not see it now. Okay. Great work. Yeah, man, I've been trying to improve my skills at like these details for these deep dives, but dang it. But that's why you're all here. Thank you. Um, thank you for your feedback always. Okay. And now 401. Let's get into the feedback from 401 from Evan the Stray. First, we see Gordon in the basement server room a few weeks after the meetings in episode 310. Cam calls him and informs him she's working remotely on the project and that she wants to talk to Joe. Yep, that's the summary. The camera seems to perform a flying quasi oneer, yeah, from the main office to the basement through the hole Joe made, back up through the hole and resting with focus on Gordon. Then, with focus on Gordon's shirt, time jumping to the future 3 times and ending on the 4th with the camping trip, which is at least a year after January 91. Oh, Evan, I think it's well after that. But I'd love for you to go back through the timeline I started to put out there, and let's see if we can nail this down anymore. Gordon appears to be wearing the same red plaid shirt in all the time jumps. I should have called it plaid. See, yeah, what can you do about me? There are 10 episodes in this season. 4 times 10 is 40, which is Gordon's birthday on the camping trip. In total, the simulated oneer runs for 5 minutes, 50 seconds. Yeah, it's long. I want to say the oneer in 201, the actual oneer was longer. It was like more like maybe 7 minutes. And this one's long. It's not actually a oneer, but it looks like one. And it's this beautiful artistic way to set us up for the season. The Cambridge coffee pot that isn't brewing and that Joe finds fascinating is about 5,000 miles away, similar to Tokyo, which is just over 5,000 miles from San Francisco. Could Cam be compared to the coffee pot that isn't brewing or producing, yet Joe remains obsessed? And alone in the basement, underworld Hades hell for 3 years, waiting on Cam and or finished web browser. Joe, a tortured romantic who carries a torch for Cam for 3 lonely years since Comdex 90 and 10 years in total. Damn. It's really good stuff. I shouldn't say anything to that. We just need to appreciate it. Okay. Donna has an MBA graduate making her beverages. Donna exhibits elective dual personalities, tough and tougher, represented by a physically binary watch. Is Donna her authentic self? Can she be trusted, or is she two-faced? That's a really fun way to express that. Tough and tougher are her 2 sides. It's like, completely savage and just I'm not putting up with your crap, Donna. Like it's not nice and nasty. It's like 2 really tough versions of Donna. That's a great way of saying that. According to PC Mags, CIX, Commercial Internet Exchange Association, pronounced KIX, thank you. KIX was an organization which required its members to exchange internet traffic with one another. Required its members to exchange internet traffic with one another. It was succeeded in 2002 by the U.S. Internet Service Provider Association, US ISPA. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for explaining. See, Evan's coming in with all this stuff that I was like, I don't know what this means. Boz seems to be slightly dissonant to Diane's prognostications about Calnec's headwinds of AOL. It feels like there's more to the story here. Maybe he's heavily invested personally and or monetarily in Calnec and sees a more bullish future, or is dismissive to ease his own concerns. Great speculation there. I mean, they're definitely looking at it. Her reserved outlook on it doesn't make Boz feel great. So that's just as good as a prediction as any. Joni calls Cam an awesome carrot in Japanese. Maybe the true identities of the subjects of Jacob Wheeler's office painting can now be revealed. Is Cam the carrot and Jacob and Joe are the potatoes? Oh my gosh. Great callback. Yeah. I'm guessing the bonsai website Joe writes down from UCLA is about the diminutive tree and not about high performance adaptive merge tree sorting, as that pertains to big data processing and would have probably only been theoretical at that time, if anything at all. I'm guessing yes. I think also bonsai is another way to loop like Japan into this episode. The number of different ways we get references to Japan in this episode is pretty cool, especially because Cam's not going back to Japan. Japan has no part in this episode, but it has every part of this episode. Joe's sternness towards Cam leads to her inquiry of whether he's mad at her. He answers with, "Wouldn't you be?" She nods and says, "Yeah," as tears well in her eyes. These few sentences don't convey the weight of the scene that feels so heavy and full. Them standing next to each other, watching Happy Birthday and Blue Man Group and Gordon and a whole crowd cheering. They are just so, each of them it feels so heavy, and they're not together in that. And there's this heaviness between them and heaviness in them. It's so sad. God. But on the other hand, Evan says, "One hell of a 40th birthday party, Gordo. Congrats." Yeah. I mean, Blue Man Group. Who gets a 40th birthday party like that? Hole's album, Live Through This, is quite good and enjoyable start to finish. I bought it in 94 and still give it a listen through every couple of years. Doll Parts is an accessible song for radio audiences from the album, though Violet and Gutless are solid up-tempo bangers that are kinetically inspiring. Courtney Love's voice is great in this capacity, very powerful. I typically say I love this album as a punless declaration. Yeah. I also, this is one of the first CDs that I had. And I didn't know what it was. And I was like poaching ideas from my sister's Christmas list. And I was like, I want this CD and this CD and this CD. She must have been like, damn it. But I got Hole, and I remember Live Through This. And yeah, what a powerful song. What a big needle drop to have here. Donna's one night stand is actor Christopher Lowell, who is Carrie Bechet's real life partner, whom I best recognize from the fun 80s period show Glow. Oh, fun facts. Good to know. Evan's research, my God. And the chorus, "And Someday You Will Ache Like Ike," is heard repeatedly as we see Donna and Cameron expressing pain through smiles and sullen stares. Yeah. It's so interesting in this episode, the way we're seeing the contrast in how people deal with their pain. And then there's just Gordon, who's like, "Stop it. Stop it, everybody." Poor Gordon. Donna bumps into Cam at Gordon's hacienda. Donna must be salty after Cam booted her from the web project with Gordon and Joe just to have Cam basically do little with it in 3 years. There have been only several hundred downloads and no final version delivered at this point in the episode. I don't know to what extent Donna knows the stats. If they had an actual website counter somewhere that she could see publicly, that would be one thing. I don't know if she exactly knows the stats or how removed Cam has been. I don't know why Gordon would like volunteer information about Cam to Donna or Joe, who are going to like, if you mention Cam's name, you know they're going to run with it for like 3 days straight. So I don't know that Gordon would want to be volunteering that kind of information to Donna. So I don't know how much she knew about it, but yeah, salty for sure. In the Calnecked basement with Cam, Joe says nothing. It's too late in response to Cam asking what he wants her to do. Come on, Joe. 10 years waiting in the subway station and now your train is leaving. The gall of him. I mean, what's he supposed to do? Like, as far as he knows, she's married. Like, what's changed? There's only more pain coming. Okay, Pilgrim. It's a game you live. Cam. And so it goes. Life is a game you play. And the philosophical POV from Cam appears to be that leaving the controls or instructions out of the manual makes the game or life so much more rewarding and respectful to the person or player. Also, Cam's game name, Pilgrim or The Pilgrim, is especially interesting in the context of Kurt Vonnegut's character, Billy Pilgrim, in his book Slaughterhouse-Five, which importantly uses the so it goes phrase 106 times. Surely this isn't mere coincidence in Halt's writing. Oh, okay. So I got the so it goes reference. It seems like correct, but didn't know. I haven't read Slaughterhouse-Five, so didn't know the Pilgrim piece. So this really is working out very nicely. Gordon, loose lips sink ships, carelessly spilling the beans to Donna on indexing every website. Yeah, I mean, and who's about to pay the price? The Rover team. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay. Quote parts. Oh, I see what you're doing here. Big veins. Listen, I'll say it again. You did it. You and Ryan called it. You said the internet would be the next great public utility. Well, guess what? We're here. We did it. We are Thomas Edison. We built the power company. So why don't you come upstairs and run the power company with me? That's Gordon's speech. And now from Joe, we've got dull legs. You're trying to convince yourself that it's okay to stop when every fiber of your being is telling yourself to keep going. I've been telling you for years that you are a builder. You need to build. Doll arms from Cam. You know, the way things are growing, you're going to run out of Post-its pretty soon. Oh boy, that was a big one. Dog bait from Cam. Do you want to talk about what we're really talking about? Good question. Doll mouth from Gordon. Look, you spent 5 minutes with him in the basement and now he's convinced that you're handing him fire from the mountaintop. Mm-hmm. Doll eyes from Joe. If we had worked on this together, it could have been amazing. You know, the project. Bad skin from Gordon. You know, yesterday you asked me if you were cruel. ... Yeah. And doll heart from Joe. Well, that's an appropriate place to end it for Joe. Regardless, I don't want 5 months or 5 years to go by before I hear from you. So don't disappear again. I want to know you in my life. Oh. And that is the opener from season 4. 401. We did it. We've watched it together. We're doing it. So much pain. So much pain in this episode. But you know, this is where we start. It makes a lot of sense where we started this one. I love it. Thank you all for being part of this journey, for sharing your feedback. You're making this an infinitely more interesting process with your feedback. Can't wait to hear what you have to say about this one. Next time, we're going to get into 402, which I love. So we'll talk about that then. In the meantime, go out there and watch Halt and Catch Fire. Bye, everybody.